evening, ladies and gentlemen. The mayor has called the meeting to order. Mayor Davey,
Here.
Councilmember Kaplan,
Here.
Councilmember Laredo,
Here.
Councilmember London,
He's here via Zoom.
Councilmember London,
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick,
She'll be here shortly.
Vice Mayor Moss,
Here.
Councilmember Segurola.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a quorum.
Okay.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I guess we should remain standing for the invocation.
Yes, with us this evening is Reverend Felipe Assis with Key Biscayne Presbyterian Church.
I want to share with you tonight a verse from the book of Psalms. We're going to read from Psalms 111, verse 10. This is a Psalm of David, and it reads, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom, and a good understanding have all of those who do his commandments. His praises endure forever." What leaders most need is wisdom. And so, therefore, we start our meeting tonight asking God for wisdom so that decisions are handled properly and wisely in a way that it brings up the common good. Will you pray with me? Father, we are grateful for the opportunity that you give these leaders to make decisions to advance the common good here in the village of Key Biscayne. We pray that you would be with each and every one who is in the leadership of this town and those who are present here in this meeting, giving good insight and giving moderate words in order to make decisions so that the people of this village, the families, and this community would flourish. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend.
Next item, Mr. Mayor's brief comments by council.
Right. Well, it's been a few weeks, but I did want to acknowledge our 4th of July parade. We have a committee that's made up of volunteers who do incredible work. And they pulled it off yet again. They just keep managing to do it, and it's a lot of fun for those of you who were there. I hope you got to enjoy it. So thank you to all of them for all of the hard work that they do. Wanted to talk a little bit about the sargassum. I know people are getting a little frustrated. It's us against the ocean, so we're doing the best we can. We may talk about it a little bit more later, but the fact is our contractor that we've got out there is trying to do the best they can. I understand that sometimes their schedule runs into ours, but unfortunately we cannot control the tides. So they've got to do the best they can because they've been given direction by those of us on council to do their best to maximize their efforts to remove the sargassum. Third, I wanted to remind everybody, we have a mayoral race going on right now, but we also have a race for council, and that opens up in just a couple weeks. So, if you are interested in taking part in helping your community, in being a part of the decision-making process, get involved. I think registration, Madam Clerk, starts on August 12th. You can pick up a packet anytime you want. And registration, I believe, ends on August 26th.
Just one moment.
Okay.
Begins at noon on August 15th.
Okay.
Ends at noon on August 25th.
25th. Okay, 15th to the 25th. So if you're interested, please get out there. We want people. I want to see more people getting involved this year. And finally, happy birthday to Claire London. She has taken Ed away from us, and we are all very much appreciative of that. But I hope she has a great birthday, and I hope Ed does right by her. So thank you.
I'll do my best, Mikey.
All right. All right, Claire. Anybody else?
Claire's going to have a birthday again next year. Maybe they should just stay.
That's true. All right, anybody else? Comments? Or are we good?
Two brief things.
Okay.
I know there's a request to change the meeting in August due to the mayor's race. Perhaps since I see two of them here and the other one may be listening, if before I vote, does that affect your campaign at all? Before you can somehow, I'd like to know if that helps them or hurts them.
Us moving our meeting date?
Yeah, I just don't know. I usually just ask them as a courtesy.
It'd be nice to celebrate with you, you know?
Okay.
Fine.
So the answer is you don't mind.
Katie? Okay.
Okay, thank
Perfect.
you.
All right.
The other thing, and more importantly, on the issue with the last few weeks we've had, when we thought this country was already had it enough with the incredible criminality of killings every week, we had the issue of, unfortunately, in Texas, 19 kids. Obviously, all parents in this community are overly, very concerned. And that was the one time where we had a real complete, absolute disaster from the policing, rather than the focus is less on the assailant than the policing. And so I wanted to assure people, and I've asked, I want to let you know that I've done some research, and the police chief will make some comments on our preparedness to give people a sense of how professionally we're anticipating and training for that. That's it.
Anybody else comments? Councilmember London, Councilmember Figueroa? Councilmember London, Okay. All right, let's move on.
Next item is public comments.
Okay, we have nobody signed up at this moment. Is there anybody in chambers who would like to speak? Okay, Mike, I was about to say, oh, you have people?
I'm going to read the instructions.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, yeah, that's right. Mike doesn't do it, you don't.
For those of you watching the meeting on channel 77 on Comcast, on channel 99 on AT&T Uverse, or streaming live via our website, if you would like to speak during public comments, please call 305-365-7569, then enter Zoom ID number 231-627-8415, followed by pound. There is no participant ID. Press pound again, press 9, which places you into a queue. When it's your turn to speak, you'll be called upon by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. If you have joined through the Zoom app and wish to speak, please click the raise your hand button.
Okay. Mike, is there anybody signed up so far? Mike, do we have anybody? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I don't see anybody signed up there.
Okay, we'll have another opportunity for public comments. I mean, if somebody pops up in the next couple of minutes, and we'll allow them to speak. Let's move to the next item.
Next item is the agenda. Approval, deferrals, additions, deletions, substitutions, and withdrawals.
Okay, I've got a request to, because again, we want to we want to allow Claire to enjoy her birthday. I'd like to propose that we move 10E, F, G, H, I to the front of the resolutions section. I know we're going to talk about deferring a couple. I think the manager's going to bring that up. But I'd like to put E, F, G, H, I before B, if that's okay with everybody.
Before A?
Before 10B. Well, yes, before 10A, but because I'm assuming that will be deferred.
Okay.
E, F, G, H, I. And then that was it for me. Anybody want to make any others? Okay,
Yeah,
Mr.
Mayor,
Manager?
I do have a request for deferment. I'd like to defer items
Sorry, go ahead.
9A and 10A, which are regarding the stormwater utility fee. As you know, we've been working with council members closely to review and refine this. Unfortunately, we found out, we recognized yesterday that we had sent out the non-updated version. So this is so important. Not only does it impact your ability to read this ordinance, but also our residents' ability to read it. And since it has potentially a financial impact on our residents, I think we should defer that. I think it's in the best interest of all.
And I'd also like to pull 8D. I had a resident who would like to speak. That's the,
You want to pull for discussion?
Pull for discussion 8D
Okay.
on the trees. just on some specific issues relating to Harbor Park Drive. Okay, anybody else?
On your request for deferral, can we have an opportunity to talk about why that is important, or can we do it now? I just think this has been postponed several times.
Why the postponement is due? Yeah, I think that's fine, absolutely.
No, I have in trouble postponing. I like to have, I like to start making decisions because a lot of things are backing up.
Well,
And there may be a compelling reason. He told me a little bit about it over the phone, but
I mean, I would argue, and I spoke to him as well, I would love to see this move forward as well. I'm with you on this. But the fact is the public didn't get a hold of it. And I kind of feel like, again, we want to make sure that everybody understands and they've had a chance to look at it. I'm with you.
I think it's as simple as Mr. Mayor, look, I think we've been working this hard. There's no one else who wants to see this move more than I do. But I think when you bring something this serious that has a major impact to people's financial well-being, if you don't give them an opportunity to read this far enough in advance, I think it's best that we defer this to August.
I think that's the way to do it. Yes, sir.
I also, in my opinion, there's a mistake as far as the survey, the percentage that the surveyors came out with for the base rate. So until that's looked at and possibly gone over, come back with another reading, I don't think it's fair to bring it before the council at this time.
Okay. All right, so that's the vote to, sorry.
Just before we, if there is a motion to defer in a second, I know there's also discussion about modifying the primary date, which was discussed earlier.
Right.
We would need to make a motion to defer that ordinance to a date certain. So if we could maybe first address the date in which you're going to move the
All right,
August.
then what, I didn't realize, yeah, then let's do that now. Let's modify, like, we'd
so
also,
that Wednesday following this.
right, the August 24th, I think it is.
August 24th?
August 24th?
Yeah.
Okay. So I second the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So that motion carries.
Sorry, who was the first?
I was the second. It was Councilmember Laredo made the motion to move it. So now we've got, so let's go back to the deferral item. So we'll be deferring the second reading of the ordinance under, I'm sorry, 9A. We'll be deferring that to August 24th.
Correct.
Okay.
And also 10A.
Yeah.
Well, 10A, yeah,
Yes,
but that one we
doesn't
don't have to defer
require
to.
a notice, but
Right.
that's correct. It will be following on. that.
Correct. So, all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries.
All right.
The next item is a special presentation, status of the Strategic Vision Board Plan.
Yeah, I think I can keep this very short for you guys. Just want to give you an update of where we are. So we finally have been working with our planner, and they have been putting together, from our workshop, the book for the vision plan. And it's still very much what they put together. And what we want to do now is kind of review it and make sure that this is something that we think fits Key Biscayne, and because a lot of this came from their mind from the outside, and we kind of want to give that Key Biscayne touch. So our group is reviewing each page by page. Each member is putting in their comments, and we're sending that out. And right now the planner is not doing any work. We're trying to do everything in-house with Jeremy, and since he's a planner as well. And we will have our next meeting together, since the summer is very difficult for everybody to get together, is on August 27th. And it gives the opportunity for the public to come and sit in that meeting.
Saturday?
It is a Saturday, yeah.
good.
So the public can come and listen, give comments and feedback as well, while we're doing kind of what we see as our kind of final comb through the plan in order to get to the final stage. And so I just want to thank all of you guys for your patience on this. It's a lot of work, and people putting a lot of hours into it.
Great, and let's make sure that the word gets out. We can use Village Connect and use all the resources to make sure people know what time it starts on August 27th so they can attend. Okay, next item?
Next item is the consent agenda.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mike?
Yeah.
Mike? Excuse me, I'd like to pull 8C.
Okay,
So 8D was already
pulled.
so this would be 8C also.
Right.
So the balance would be 8A 8B and 8E.
Okay.
The other thing is also 8E.
Okay.
You're pulling it all?
What about A and B? Why you gotta leave them on there?
8C, D, and E have been pulled. Oh, well, we actually need a motion on that. I'll move to, well, he's moved. I'll second his motion to pull C and E. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those items are also pulled.
So
Okay.
basically, it's just the
The
minutes.
minutes.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right.
The next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, confirming the village's ability to fund and support the permitting, design, construction, and monitoring of the village's beach renourishment project, providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember London, you had some questions about this? This is tab.
My question is, if we talk about supporting this, we all want the beach to be renourished, we all want the beach to be great. But it says, we said we're gonna do it, but it doesn't say how much we're committing to spend. Any idea from Roland, the balance of the funding? How much is the balance?
Rowan, if you would.
Yeah, hi, good evening, Councilmember London. This is merely in order to do an annual application that we do to the state for support from the state, supporting funds from the state to do the design moving forward, ultimately for the next beach nourishment that we have. I believe that it's $100,000 at this point that we're asking the state for. And we do this application to the state every year. And in order to be able to do the application, we just need to have this resolution.
Okay. Like, Rolly, you didn't answer my question. So this is $100,000. What would the total cost be?
For the next beach renourishment, we're budgeting approximately $2.1 million.
Okay, so we're budgeting it, and that's a capital, is it, we're getting grants from the federal government, state government, how are we gonna pay for it?
Well, ultimately, it's a cost share 50-50 with the state. So ultimately, we would, at this point, be on the hook for 50% of the cost share, and then we're always seeking external funding from not only from the state, but also from the federal government and also from the county.
So we're on the hook for about $1 million?
Oh, let me jump in here before we go. I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves here, Council Member. This is not, I mean, Rowan used the word budget. This is not budgeted. This would be programmed, and I'm not even sure what year we're looking at. I think it's 2025, 2026.
24-25.
So, you know, this obviously will come back to the council, but we need to go out and understand what the requirements are, which will then set the potential cost for this. So we're not anywhere at the point now on knowing how much this is going to cost.
But I think I'm a little bit with Ed. What he meant to ask you is, as it relates to this motion, which gives you the permission to apply, and let's say that they give you up to 100,000, what would be for this study, the so-called design, construction, and monitoring, that part, are we going to be out of pocket in addition to hopefully the 100,000 from the state?
No, I mean, ultimately, we put in 100,000, the state puts in 100,000.
Okay, well, that's the answer.
Okay.
So there will be 100,000. It's 100,000, Ed.
So my question, is this budgeted in this fiscal year?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Okay. And
Anybody else?
The purpose of this is simply to demonstrate that we're committed to pay our share of whatever the ultimate cost is.
Correct.
And that'll be determined 3 years from now.
correct.
Okay. Call the question. Anybody else have any questions? All right, call the question, please.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd like to continue to defer because I do have a resident who does want to come here for 8D. So if we could push that to the bottom of the resolutions, does anybody have an objection?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Push 8D. I want that to be the last resolution we tackle tonight. Okay,
Is there a motion for that? I'm sorry.
I'll move to push that to the end.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Favor?
Thanks.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Next resolution is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving professional service agreements with Southeastern Engineering Contractors, Inc., David Mancini and Sons, Inc., and GPE Engineering and General Contractor Corp. for miscellaneous stormwater construction and repair services on an as-needed basis, using the terms and conditions of the City of Fort Lauderdale contract competitively awarded pursuant to invitation to bid number 12504-613, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Ed, you were the one who had the questions about this?
Same thing. Yeah, I do. It's the same thing over and over again. We're gonna go with Fort Lauderdale's contract. Have we bid it out? Have we got responsive bidders?
Yeah.
Fort Lauderdale is better anything we got?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Fort Lauderdale does this contract every few years. They have a variety of contractors in their list. And this is a requirements contract, basically establishes unit cost for each work items. And we did our due diligence and looked around, and these are really good prices. If we were to bid this contract ourselves, not only that it's a big work for us, we wouldn't be able to get near those prices. It is very good, these numbers.
Obviously, you won't know what prices you get till you try.
We
You won't know what prices you get until you bid things out.
How much is it going to cost us to put this out to bid?
we can't put it out, but
Sometimes
it's,
just a problem.
Hold on, I'm asking Jake.
And giving out contracts without bidding them, spending our money. I mean, Jake, you might be 100% correct, 100% correct. But we don't know that until we bid it ourselves. We had the excuse before, we had nobody working for us that could do bids and purchases. Well, that is old news. Now we do have that capability. So I'm saying, bid it out.
I understand, council member. What we did was we did our due diligence, looked at the prices that we paid in our recent contracts, compared to this contract. These prices are very good, lower than what we usually pay. And there's 3 contractors there that they're going to honor their prices. And it's a very competitive contract, and everybody piggybacks this contract. We are not the only one that piggybacks. There are a number of municipalities, Hollywood, a few others that.
Well, to Councilmember London's point, how long are these prices locked in if we were to put this out to bid? Asking theoretically.
It's up to us. You could 3
No.
years, 5 years.
No, you misunderstand. We're, with this agreement that piggybacks.
Oh, it's 1
How
year.
long is this available to
1 year.
us?
It's 1 year.
No. So City of Fort Lauderdale has this contract that we would be piggybacking off of.
Correct.
How long do we have the capability to piggyback off that contract?
Until the contract expires in Fort
Oh,
Lauderdale.
okay,
means a
so
year
that-
from
so-
today.
Their contract expires May 31st of 2023.
Okay.
So
So we could and how much would it cost us to go out to bid on this?
It's a staff time. It's not, there's no additional.
Estimated cost to do this?
Can I,
Sir, yeah, no, I just want to answer for that question.
I think that's important that,
Wait,
we
Councilmember
pull-
Loretta,
oh,
I just want to
sorry.
get an answer and then you're next.
I can't ask this, again, it's like Jake said, it's staff time.
Okay, Councilmember Loretta?
Which is what Ed London just said, that we didn't have a staff before, but now we have a staff to do this, so it's kind of a circular logic. What I want to emphasize, and I support London's thrust here, is he's really sticking to policy making, and he doesn't want to get into micromanaging of contracts, but he has consistently been saying, which is a normal or good practice, there are exceptions, that historically, we haven't been doing a lot of bidding. And historically, we all know who are in the real world that some people are locked into our community and people don't even bid because they said that's already a foregone conclusion. But if anything, in this case, Ed has been consistent from a policy point of view. I'm not into reviewing specific contracts, and I think his advice has not been followed as a matter of policy. I'm just saying, I'm not putting words in his mouth. But if you see what he did before and what he's doing on this issue or what he's doing consistently is show me the beef. One of the excuses was we didn't have the staff. Well, he just told you we hire staff. So, I mean, we're either going to have to follow that methodology, which is normal, with exceptions, but it seems like it's a rule rather than an exception. So beyond this particular issue, I hope you take that into consideration.
Okay,
As we try to
Councilmember,
maximize efficiency.
Councilman McCormick, and then the Vice Mayor.
Jake, you mentioned that you compared the prices from the Fort Lauderdale contract with what we currently pay. When did we bid out those contracts that you were comparing to?
We put out a variety of jobs in the last few years. Safe Routes to Schools project was once one of them. Beach Pat that we're doing, another one. Firmer Road is another one. We did the resurfacing, milling and resurfacing at Village Green. So those are the prices. And we also pay, we put out small jobs. We solicit 3 bids. Let's say I have to replace a catch basin and repair a small area. We go out, ask 3 contractors to give us the unit prices. So those are the libraries that I have that I compare. And I found out that these prices are very competitive. And when I called Fort Lauderdale, I found out that a number of big municipalities also piggyback because it's a good negotiated contract. That's the point.
So you have recently gotten 3 bids, and
Yeah.
those were the numbers you used to compare to the
Correct.
Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. But again, this contract is very inclusive. There are about a few hundred items in it, which we're not going to tap into. Maybe 10 or 15 items we're going to use. Those are the ones I compared, and I found the prices are good. We can bid. It doesn't hurt. We'll bid it, and we're going to bring it back, and we can compare it again.
That was going to be my question. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, my question, in construction, when you see somebody a third lower than everybody else, that brings up a red flag to make sure that, are you sure that the scope of work and what they're providing, are they exactly equal? Is there something missing for someone to be that much less than the others?
So these are unit prices based on DOT specifications. It's very rigid and it's clear. And the contractors actually in the short list are very reputable contractors. Some of them did work here. David Masson and Sons is one. Southeastern Engineering is another one. And the third company, I forgot the name. So these are very reputable. But again, scope of work is very rigid, well-defined, and very clear.
So they're all identical what they're bidding
They're all
on?
identical, correct. It's, again, unit price on it. So let's say square foot of concrete, $5.
Yeah.
Linear foot of curb and gutter.
So how did one come in a third less than the other 2?
But again, these are,
I would expect them all to be very close to each other because in the construction, when we see something that low, we got to research it really closely. Because a lot of times people want to jump to that cheap price and then they get the guy out there, they start working and they start messing up everything. And then you end up paying 3 times more by the time you're done with it. So I just want to make sure that, is there why, we would usually try to figure out why that's happening and make sure it's legitimate and are the other people just higher because they're busy or is one lower because I don't know, there's something missing.
And again, these are reputable contracts. One may be that is trying to get into Fort Lauderdale and do more work for lower prices. But again, we're not locked into any of these 3. It's our choice to pick and choose whomever we want to work with.
So how long would it take you? You just said you could do some bids, get some bids and see where we are. How long would that take?
Probably in the backlog right now, probably a couple months.
And what's the cost to us in the interim?
Again, it's staff time. There's no extra
No, I'm not
cost.
asking about the staff, but in terms of what it's on an as-needed basis, right? So when we have work, what do you estimate?
Stormwater utility fund, we usually spend, we have about close to $300,000 budget to do repairs and everything else. And we've been putting a lot of work off because we're going to do major construction. But there's some work that I got to really get to it. And so we're hoping that we could use this contract. Whether we piggyback this or we put our own, good to have a requirements contract is available at our disposal.
Mr. Manager?
If I may,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Councilmember.
Yeah, Councilmember Bradley.
Well, I want to reinforce what the Vice Mayor has said. I had the unfortunate, some of us bring our experiences, private sector, public sector. I was with the Performing Arts Center that we built here, and it doubled from 250 to 300 budgeted. A very low bid by a company that I won't mention because very reputable international company, and it wound up costing us $500 million of taxpayers' money. I want to reinforce that Ed London's consistent mantra has been, let's change the chip. I'm not questioning this specific contract because I don't want to delay a lot of the stuff that we need to move on. But I hope you're not missing the big picture here, which is, scrutinize, share the fact that some of us have experiences, whether in private sector, public sector, combination. 1/3 below, it's a red flag. And if you live through some of these other projects, like I just mentioned one, it's a reality. They call them change orders. And all of a sudden, you're halfway through in a change order and you can't change. And all of a sudden, you wind up with 500 million. Ed London is laughing because he's lived through these themselves. So don't miss the main point here, Mr. Manager and Jake. We're not criticizing, at least I'm not, and I don't believe that. But the discipline should be part of our new team.
Point is well taken, sir, and I'll tell you.
Ed, hold on. Hold on, Ed. Wait, they're responding to Councilmember Laredo's point.
No, I was just saying, point is well taken, and when we spend the money, every dollar, we look at it as if it's our own, so.
Ed?
Yeah, real quickly, about the 1/3 off, Brett. Real quick, little anecdote. About 1997, basically decided to start putting cell phones in South Florida. And so I was building cell phone towers. And the first job I bid, I lost because I was a low bidder. I was 1/3 below the cost of everybody else. And they said, you probably aren't competent, you probably don't know what you're doing. Well, let you rebid again. So I increased it from then on 1/3 higher, and I built cell phone towers from basically Vero Beach up to Fort Myers, and I made an incredible profit. Now, why did everybody bid them high? Because that was Verizon, and they're willing to pay, and they're in a hurry. So just because somebody is 1/3 low, they may know they're dealing with governments, and lots of times governments are not the best buyers of goods and services.
Mr. Manager?
I have a question about that.
Go ahead, Councilmember Cigarola.
Jake, if these prices are only good for a year, just how much work are you planning on really actually getting done in the next year?
Probably between now and it expires, I would say close to about $400,000 or $500,000, probably a couple $100,000 from this year's budget, and similar to next year. Repairing the hardscapes such as curbs and gutters and sidewalks, drainage pipes, catch basins. There's quite a bit of work that we have backlogged that we want to put out.
So relatively minor stuff.
Small jobs, 20,000 here, 30,000 there, but it adds up.
But they add up.
Okay. So nothing major. You just want to do some housekeeping with these prices for
Again, these are on-call contractors that can call literally in 24-hour notice and create a quick sketch and get it done in an emergency repair basis. Anything bigger will be, anything that's designed will be put out the contract for formal solicitation and contract out that way.
Yeah, this is just for as-needed work.
Okay, since this is going to be only as-needed minor housekeeping stuff for the next year, even if we approve this, shouldn't you go ahead and start creating a bidding process for what you're going to need a year from now and forward?
That is the actual goal. We will do it, but again, we want to take this opportunity because the prices are really good and the contractors are willing to honor it. Ultimate goal would be to actually have our own contract, and it's going to expire in a year anyway.
Right. So my suggestion would be to go ahead and start that process because a year is going to pass by in a blink of an eye.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Manager, you had something to say?
Yeah, if I could add to the discussion. This is, and I think it just came pretty clear with what Councilman Cigarola said. This is a work order type contract. This is not something we're doing major construction. This is something that Jake will pull off for periodic jobs. Obviously, something very important. But one of the things when a city the size of Fort Lauderdale can do is they can get economies of scales. And when there's other municipalities that pull off them, it even demonstrates that they have an even better economies of scale where things that we can't necessarily get the price for. And this is best practice. There are co-ops throughout South Florida. There are piggybacks throughout South Florida. And that's actually one of the things that you do want a procurement officer to do for you is to find the best way to procure things. It's not necessarily an RFP. It's not necessarily an RFQ. There are co-ops. There are piggybacks. And then so you get the advice from your procurement officer to make the best decision, the best price. That simplifies our way to get the things that we need to get. And I believe my recommendation, as you see, is very clear to move forward with this. I think we have two options going forward in the future. Is one, as Jake mentioned, try to do an RFP for ourselves. But at the same time, this is going to run out in May, but Fort Lauderdale will be re-upping this contract. So we'll keep very closely aware of that and whether they can do this better than we can.
So let me ask you this. If we were to theoretically approve this right now, because it's as needed, so if we got somebody to come in, if we did an RFP at the same time, and somebody came in with lower bids, could we then shift to that person? Would that be a problem?
There will be no problem. We're not married.
Yeah, we could have multiple contracts.
So, I mean, if everybody's in accord, why not, I mean, if this price is lower than what we'd be paying now, why don't we take it while you guys are going out to bid? But I agree, I mean, Councilmember Laredo, stated, going forward in the future, let's, you do have a procurement officer who's doing this stuff for you, but if we can bid it out, let's make sure we're doing the best we can. I know you guys are, but I think the win here is take the cheap price while we're still looking. Would you guys, I mean, is that acceptable, Ed?
Yeah,
Okay.
as long as we don't forget about it like we usually do.
No.
And stop looking.
Don't,
I'll move it
no,
with that comment.
well, I'd like, okay, I'll second it. I'll second my recommendation.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I'm going to do the reso.
Good, and then go to 10 E, F, G, H, I.
A resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the village manager to issue a work order to AECOM Technical Services, Inc. for the development of a basis of design report relating to the K8 stormwater drainage improvements project in an amount not to exceed $265,480 and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Jake Rowan, if you would.
All right, council members, mayor, vice mayor. Given our obvious challenges that we have with water, as we've seen back in June, and as we've seen today, we're at an exciting next step in kicking off the upgrade of our village's stormwater system to improve street drainage across the village. A lot of thought and hard work and planning has gone into this over the past 7 years. Not the least of which was completion of work order 1 to AECOM, looking at the gap analysis on the model, looking at boundary conditions, looking at design storms, looking at discharge deficits, as well as the important decision that council made back in April relative to levels of service and design criteria, all of which enables us to move forward in initiating design, which is basically the next step that we have to take. Specifically, what we are recommending council to approve is essentially a two-part work order represented by one resolution that focuses on the 30% design for the K8 area, and the second resolution being focused on a big macro level analysis of discharge capacity and capabilities of our system, and then developing a number of different scenarios, looking at the overall system and what an upgrade would look of the overall system, as well as the cost of that ultimate upgrade. The first work order focused specifically on K8 is delineated by the black line in this figure that you see. That's the focus area of the 30% design. That scope is going to include, but is not limited to, evaluating 3 different scenarios to optimize the design, as well as pump station sizes and locations, roadways and right-of-way modifications, considered streetscape, traffic management, construction phasing, and environmental assessments needed for subsequent permitting. Now, the second part of the work order is essentially the system-wide drainage and cost analysis that you see in this timeline, and that goes hand in glove, working in parallel with the 30% design. So they're both represented and captured in that yellow box. And that scope is ultimately the analysis of the entire system. It's going to also involve 3 different scenarios, along with the probable cost estimates for redesign and construction of the stormwater system village-wide. The upgraded model that was looked into in the first work order is going to be utilized in order to execute the analysis, and it's also going to be utilized to move forward in future designs of other sections of the system as we move beyond K8. So ultimately, these were developed and sized very carefully through discussions with the manager, with Jake, and with AECOM, and based on the foundational work that was done previously over the last 7 years, as well as the work order 1 results. The fee was rigorously negotiated with AECOM, yielding a 5.1 and a 5.5 reduction to the benefit of the village on each of the various work orders. This work's going to be conducted in parallel with other things that we have going on right now, which is moving FPL out on the design of the undergrounding, as well as the development of the joint powers agreement with Miami-Dade Water and Sewer Department, which enables us to look at the water lines and sewer lines and upgrade those as we're in the ground working on the stormwater system, as well as the seawall ordinance that we're in the process of developing as we speak, and is going to relate specifically to anything that is done on the stormwater side of the equation relative to the outfalls, and outfalls discharging from the seawalls then having to be rebuilt. So at this point in time, initiating design is the only next step. We've done pretty much everything to get to the point where if you want to actually build something, you've got to design it. And that's kind of where we're at. So we're asking council to take these two resolutions into consideration and approve them so that we can continue moving forward and not just be stuck for the next 6-7 months.
I move it, Mr. Mayor.
We've already moved. It's already been moved, so we're good to go. Anybody got any questions? I appreciate the time. You know, we all got to sit with you. Ed? Yeah, go ahead.
I asked these questions, I didn't get the answers before, Roland. I submitted in writing, so I'll ask you in public. I'm sure the area within the black lines, that is what we're talking about, the entire area.
That's correct.
Number one, are we designing for 5-year or 10-year? I think the difference is between 7 and 8 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour event. What's our status on that? What are we designing?
At the April council meeting, a 10-year, 24-hour design storm was selected.
The other thing is that us as council members, to make rational, intelligent decisions, we really have to know what the probability is of different rain events over a long period of time. Obviously, it's only an educated guess. Weather's changing all the time. Because we talk about one of these events, the question is, if we want to have one of these events in 10 years, but the rest of the time there's no problem, how much money do you want to spend? If we have a lot of these events, even though they're not 7 inches, maybe they're 5 inches, we want to spend a different amount of money. So we really should have not just the cost of, say, a 5 or 10 year, a 7 or 8 inch event, but rather what is the probability, look historically, projecting forward, of rain events which will cause inconvenience, major inconvenience to our Key Biscayne residents. So we know going forward. That was number one. Or number two, whatever you want to call it. Sorry. Now, you're also talking about this water we're going to put in the swales. If we're talking about the swales, are we talking about one-way streets and large swales? Are we talking about deep swales? Are we talking about minor swales in the right-of-way? What are we talking about in regards to the crown of the road? I mean, because people might not like to have very deep swales to achieve this thing, but yet maybe that's an effective way of doing it. So these are the questions I have. And finally, well, this $265,000, is this the end of this thing? Are they going to give us construction drawings? Do we go out and bid this out? Or is this just one step in a long process? And if it is, how much is it going to cost us with AECOM to get construction drawings so we can actually do something rather than just design something? That's my minor question.
All right. So to answer your question step by step, let's take the issue of swales, rights-of-ways, and crown of road. Those are going to be looked at as part of the design process for K8, as well as the process that we go through evaluating the larger village-wide system. At this point in time, those rights-of-way are not swales. There are no swales. They're just flat rights-of-way. and they are level to the crown of road. So effectively, they serve no function from a storage point of view. That is going to be looked at as part of the 30% design for K8, and it's also going to be taken into consideration in the larger analysis of the overall system. And the other thing to take into consideration is that no decisions have been made at this point relative to one-way streets or two-way streets or elevating at that point. Under the scenario runs that are going to be undertaken for the K 30% design and potentially the scenario runs that are done for the analysis of the village-wide system, we may want to consider some streets being made one way. But at this point, no decision has been made to make streets one way. So that falls out of the process. It comes out of the process. The other thing that you were asking about was
probabilities.
The design storms. So probability distributions will be taken into consideration as you move forward with designing. The fact of the matter is a 5-year 24-hour event or a 10-year 24-hour event doesn't necessarily mean that it's only going to happen once in 10 years or once in 5 years. It can happen multiple times. It could happen in multiple times in any given year. Now, I was able, as I was researching, trying to answer your questions, which you did send to me earlier, I came across a study that was done by the University of Florida, the Institute of Food and Agricultural Science, where they did try to actually answer the question, what is the probability of a given rainfall event that happens M times in N years? And they have developed a table where they could say for a 10-year design storm, in a year, there's a 10% chance that it will show up. In 2 years, there's a 19% chance that it'll happen at least once. In 5 years, there's a 41% chance that it'll happen at least once. So, I mean, as you go further and further out, there's a bigger and bigger chance that it's going to happen in any given year. Okay? So you have to be very, you have to be very mindful of that for sure, but you can't necessarily say, okay, well, there's only a 1% chance that this is going to happen in 10 years, and therefore we needn't take it into consideration, because the reality is we're already getting storm events that come close or exceed a 10-year, 24-hour event, and it inundates throughout the entire village, and we've seen it, I've already seen it multiple times since I've been here in 2 years. So we've already got a problem, and it's a recurring problem that needs to be dealt with. And then there was a third question that you had that at this point I can't.
It was the storm assumptions that we discussed several months ago.
The what was it?
Which of the various projections to build a model?
What council selected was a 10-year, 24-hour design storm, and that's what AECOM is going to work with. And then depending on the magnitude of the cost of doing a village-wide infrastructure upgrade to a level of service that was selected under a design storm of 10-year, 24 hours, it may be necessary that we revisit that. Mm-hmm. And that can be factored into the design process as you move forward with K8 in parallel.
I think when we discussed that intermediate line, we realized that, we recognized that.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, my comment has to do with exactly what you just said. So my biggest concern when we met was, I'm always, this is a very complex project. There's a lot of puzzle pieces, and I'm glad that you guys put this map together because we're starting to see what piece is fitting where. I'm trying to get my head around that the K8, is it 30% of the project, 10% of the project? How much of the chunk is that going to, make up of improving our stormwater and our key? But I wanted to make sure that we're not putting the cart in front of the horse in front of the cart, trying to figure out how and orient ourselves where we are. And I wanted to make sure that since we have two separate work orders that are going on, I'm guessing, my understanding is that the K8 is a 30% design criteria package that will be ready for us to basically take it to either design build firm or design build, but they can basically design based off of that. And we can price pretty accurately, I'm guessing, from those 30% drawings because it's mostly the design. So my question is that, you know, and I was a little bit hesitant of when we made and set all the level of service, design storm, sea level rise projection, and decided that, I don't know which meeting that was, maybe in April or May. It was April. And, you know, we did it without knowing the cost. So we had to just kind of say, yes, let's start somewhere. My question is that when we start the K-8 and we're going through this process, and I want to thank you for putting together the timeline. It helps me orient where we're going here and what we can do. I want to make sure that when those prices start coming out, when you say that we can go back and revisit this, I don't want us to have to then go back and start that process of K-8 over again and start paying another $260,000 so now to redesign it because we found out that, you know, this project based on this level of service is $100 million and we thought it was going to be $20 million, so we have to go back and look at what we can do here. So I want to make sure that we can go back. The other thing is, I think that Councilmember London kind of was pointing towards this, is that we need to set a policy of what we're willing to live with, right? Because we're not getting rid of the water. I mean, we're going to get flooded streets. And, you know, my perception is that the public doesn't like the way it is now when it rains. But, you know, maybe if it was a little bit better, and depending on what the price is, I mean, we have to decide what we can, you know, what we can take and how much water we can take. So I think that's also going to be a factor. And one of the questions I asked, but I know it's very hard for you guys to understand, is what do we have today, you know? And I know that street by street is different, right? So in front of my street, which is on West Mashta, it drains much quicker than, you know, the street right next to me, which is Ed London Street, you know, and his takes twice as long as mine does to, but it would be interesting to know, you know, different points that we can at least understand what we're dealing with when we're saying 0 to 0.5 feet of ponding, 6 to 12 hours swales, 10 year to 24 hours, and a NOAA of intermediate high. So these are all just names and numbers, but at the end of the day, it really matters, you know, what we can live with our feet and cars standing out in the water. And I would like to have some help in understanding what we have today, either in a certain location, to say this is what we have. And if we're projecting this much sea level rise in this many years, we can maintain the same thing that you have right now across all your streets in 30 years, and this is what your level of service would be, and this is what it would cost. So that was the question. And the second work order, is that going to be able to give us a cost of the rest of the island, or are we just basing that off of the K-8 and trying to multiply that by how much more piping and stuff that we have to do?
So I very much want to help clarify, but there's like about 5 or 10 different things that you just threw
No, I know.
out
Yeah.
that I'd like to kind of go
Sure.
through point by point. So,
Excuse me, Roy, 1 second. You never answered the question. One of my questions, all the others, thank you so much. Once we pay this amount of money, are we ready to go build?
no, what you're paying for is a 30% design. Okay, it's not 100% design. And the idea behind doing a 30% design is to have a much better idea
of what
as
the
to
ultimate cost will be.
to get to 100% design.
So
Okay?
basically, assuming 30%, you gotta multiply this thing by 3 1/3 times, if I understand correctly. So basically, the 265 comes up to about $900,000.
No, it's probably gonna be less because I would,
No, you can't. I don't think you can arbitrarily just
Right.
multiply it by 3. That's not really the way it works, Ed. But what we find out as we're doing the 30%
Yeah, but it's a
design will actually get us to a very accurate cost estimate to get to 100% design.
right.
Okay, so there is that. Now, if we go to design bid, this BODR, basis of design report, that is your 30% design, would then be passed on to a contractor to then do the bidding process and the 30 to 100%
You're talking about design build.
Design
If we do
bid.
design build.
Design bid build.
Yeah. If we go to design bid build, then the next work order AECOM would be do the 30 to 100% design, and then that would be passed on to someone to then build it. okay? But part of the idea behind doing a 30% design is to very clearly understand what is going to be the cost of doing 100% design and what's going to be a cost of construction of K-8 specifically.
Okay.
So there's that. Now, as far as the macro level analysis of the system as its whole, to answer the question that you have, which is how does K-8 fit into the big picture? That's the second work order.
Okay.
You got to be able to use the numerical model that we have that needs to be sort of updated, and the gaps need to be filled based on the work that was done in work order 1 in order to use it to then be able to run those scenarios under a variety of conditions to then be able to answer the question, okay, well, this is how much it's going to cost under these constraints to upgrade the whole system and construct a new system, and this is and then K-8 is going to fit into that, and this is going to be the fraction that K-8 represents, and this is of the total. So there's that as well. Now, as you move forward with the analysis of the overall system, based on the results that you're getting with a 10-year, 24-hour event, with a boundary condition of no or intermediate high, with a desire to have the streets clear in 12 to 24 hours and and have the crown of road clear, all of which were things that came out of the surveys that were done of the community, back last summer under Town Hall 1 and Town Hall 2 that was part of the work order 1 completion. I mean, it's like that wasn't just sort of like arbitrarily selected. I mean, people said that that's what they wanted, Then what that tells you in terms of the overall cost can get factored into refining the design of K-8. So they don't have to happen in serial. They can happen in parallel, and you can adjust the K-8 30% design before you actually get to the end, to the 30%, based on what you're finding out running the model on the overall system.
Without incurring any additional design fees that would be added on top of what we have in front of us in a work order, it's baked in that we can still make those changes.
Yeah, we have multiple scenarios baked into the work order for K-8, and we have multiple scenarios baked into the work order for the analysis of the overall system to be able to answer the questions that you're asking and put everything into context.
But we need to start. This is the step that gets us going toward
that's correct.
That goal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, last question. So once we do this.
You promise?
Design, not a promise. The 30%, could we then go to design build contractors and say, hey, here's what we got, come back and give us a price?
If that's the choice that council makes, and that's the delivery method that you feel is best for the village, that can be done. Now it may very well be that in this particular
ballpark. Wait a second. So you're telling me this would get us in the ballpark, so we could go out once this is done and go to the contractors. Who wants to bid this? Give us bids.
Well, that's
based on this.
Give us bids to do the 30 to 100% design and then build it.
Basically, my question is: once we pay the $265, we get this thing back,
and the $359.
Can we then go ahead and talking just
just a K-8.
Can we then go ahead and get contractors to go ahead and say, here's enough information, go back and do a design and build process?
That's correct.
Yeah, they can bid on it.
They could bid on it. That's
it's
correct.
biddable for design build at that point.
Delivery method of design build, they could do that after the 30% design. If we choose to go design bid build, then the next thing that happens is AECOM gets another work order to do 30 to 100%.
This advances us, is what you're telling me.
This advances us, yes, correct.
Okay.
And
Answer my question. Thank you.
by the wisdom of the higher authority that we started this meeting with prayers, we had a wonderful rain today to accentuate to us how important it is to our community. And second of all, I congratulate your staff on the work you've done in briefing us and the hard work you've done, and particularly, Mayor, which was alluded to, but not forcefully enough, that we have been, through them, out to the public a lot. And so it's time to start, and it's time to decide. So if you would call the question.
Anybody else? Any other comments?
Ready to go.
Okay, let's go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
10F.
The
I
next,
know, we're going to 10. That's what comes after E, Ed.
I wasn't good with it.
All right, next item.
Next item is 10F.
Yes.
Resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the village manager to issue a work order to AECom Technical Services, Inc. for the preparation of a probable cost evaluation report relating to system-wide stormwater drainage upgrades in an amount not to exceed $359,769, and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Ed, questions?
Yeah. Yes. Back to the same thing. Previously to doing what we're proposing in TENA, previous to hiring AECom, we hired another engineering firm. Then we paid them a lot of money. I think we spent, I don't know how much money we raised for storm sewer. I think that $15 or $18 million worth of bonds. What they did, is that something we can utilize today, or is that something that's being ripped out? And what did they accomplish? Because I thought they're doing what AECom is doing now. Are we just duplicating what's been done?
No, we're not duplicating anything. This predates me, but I am familiar with the 2015 EAC hydraulic and hydrologic analysis that was done on our system. What it ultimately generated were Tier 1 and Tier 2 recommendations to quote unquote improve our system. The Tier 1 recommendations were basically the installation of backflow preventers on all of our outfalls. That was done and completed, how many years ago? 5 years ago. The other set of recommendations, they were Tier 2 recommendations that were ultimately more capital oriented around 14 critical basins. No design was ever generated for that. The modeling that was undertaken by EAC is going to be utilized, and that's the model that a gap analysis was done under work order 1 for AECom. And so that's going to be utilized. The gaps are going to be filled. The model is going to be updated, and it's going to take into consideration climate change aspects and sea level rise aspects that previously weren't integrated into their analysis. So we're not duplicating anything. We're just leveraging what was previously done, and we're trying to make progress on accomplishing the Tier 2 recommendations.
Good. So basically, the money we raised in the bond issue, that was for the backflow preventers and for some other stuff. Is that how we spend the inlets, et cetera? Is that what we did with that money?
There was no bond issued out of this. It was paid from the CIP budget in 2017 for the Tier 1 improvements. We did raise.
Do we float bonds for storm sewer?
For sewer, yeah, but sewer, that was a long time ago.
Was all that money spent a long time ago, or was that part of this thing?
No, that was the sewer, if you're talking about the sewer bonds, that was 2000, I mean, that was past, what, 2006, 2005?
This Tier 1 was about $600,000.
The money spent on that bond issue for the stuff we did, is that going to be able to be utilized now, or do we have to start over?
But that was sewers. That wasn't stormwater. That was our sewers when we were
talking about two different utility systems.
Yeah, the sewers were 2000. When did that project end? About 2010. So those bonds went out. Yeah, that was
earlier.
That was the sewer project. That wasn't stormwater.
It was like 2005, 2006.
Yeah, I think the bonds were issued 2005, 2004.
That's about right.
This specific resolution is basically what we were talking about.
About the system-wide.
Yeah, exactly.
And a question was sent to me was, so we're talking about the school area for now, but how long before we get to folks who are outside the K through 8 basin? Like, what's the idea on that?
Well, part of the analysis of the larger
is
system
determining how long it will take us.
Prioritize
which areas to go.
Where we should go in terms of like the next zone beyond K8, and then also part of that falls out of the next resolution that we're going to ask you to discuss and entertain, which is the integration and implementation plan for the
entire
overall resilient effort that we're going to undertake over the next 10, 15 years.
Perfect.
So, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but
don't spoil it for anybody.
Part of that process is prioritizing zones that we're going to be doing all this infrastructure upgrading in geographically.
Perfect. Okay. Any other points on this one, or?
Ready to move it.
Let's go, move it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wait, Ed,
What are we getting for the $365,000? Whatever that number is.
The ability to answer Brett's questions as to how K-8 fits into the grand scheme of things and how much it's going to cost to upgrade the entire system and what it's going to look like under the design constraints that you selected back in April. And basically an ability to have a tool to move forward with the design of the rest of the system beyond K-8.
But it's not a 30% design.
Why design the system to start with? Why are you going through this step?
Excuse me?
Why aren't we doing the same thing for the rest of the village that we're doing for the K-8 base?
We will be. We will have to go through that detailed process of 30% design and then 100% design on other sections of the village as we move forward beyond K-8.
But it was determined, wasn't it, that
So
K through 8?
why can't we do it all at the same time, do a 30% design for the entire village now, and how much would that cost?
I can't answer that question at this point. I'd have to look into it and then get back to you. But I mean, I don't think interested in doing a 30% design for the entire village when we don't yet really have a full analysis of what the potential complete cost of upgrading might be.
Well, wouldn't we get a better idea once we had these 30% designs done and give it out to contractors, design build, then we know what it really costs?
Yeah, I'm going to try to answer. So the K-8 has quite a bit of work done already, right? So we've already modeled existing conditions, future conditions. So we are way ahead. What we want to do was we did not want to hold K-8 hostage while we're doing village-wide modeling. We want to push the project forward. We are fast-tracking K-8. That's what we're doing. We couldn't really do 30% design for the entire village because normally it costs a lot of money. We're looking at a couple $1 million work order, number one. And also, we want to answer a lot of questions from the community on the K-8 project as if it's in a pilot. So a lot of things that are going to happen village-wide is going to be answered in K-8, such as your roadway geometry, right? You're going to use curbs and gutters and sidewalks, street lights, how narrow the streets, how wide the streets, all the streetscape treatments, typical sections, community meetings, it's all going to be down to K-8. And to the earlier point, we got to understand what elements really move the cost, right? So there are two major things going to happen in this project that changes the cost. Street elevation and the pump station. Everything else will be the same regardless of what we designed 20 years, 30 years, 100 years. At the end of the day, we have the money that we have. It's unlimited. So we're going to have to kind of realign ourselves. But we do know that the two major cost differences are street elevations and pump station sizes. So that's all going to be answered through K-8. I don't think we can take the risk of entire island doing it right now. And where we know we can't even build the entire island next 10 to 15 years. And I think it will be the right way to go, project by project, do one, address the one in worst condition, which is K-8, have lessons learned, and move on and do it the right way.
So it's your recommendation that we go forward with this, looking at I mean, we've already approved K-38, but the system-wide builds off that, and we can move forward.
Correct.
This work order that we're approving right now, you've already done that modeling for the K-8. That's already been done.
Correct. Portion of it is already done, yes.
Okay, so we're just catching back up to that level, and then once we get there, we can divide, and then we can decide which ones we want to do 30% on.
These two work orders kind of feed each other. It's going to happen in parallel, but we want to fast-track K-8 because the community waited long enough. It's time to go.
And what you're saying is that the bids that come out of K-8, we can apply that to the other area to give us a pretty close price of what we're going to be looking
at. A lot of decisions that's going to be made in K-8 is going to apply to the rest of the island.
Right. And then we can see how close we can get to what our hope was based on all the community input last April.
Correct.
And then I'll answer, before we get to 30%, probably we'll know where we are 10 to 15%. We'll know exactly what's going to cost. It won't be like, okay, here's the 30%. $500 million, yes or no. It won't be the question. There are a number of meetings going to be done before this council will let the council know that where we are in terms of cost. Maybe we won't be able to make it 24-hour event. I don't know. It will be maybe 5 years, not 10 years. But these are the questions that we answered before we get to 30%. It's not that we get 30% spend this money. Okay, I'll go back and change it. Right. It's going to be
as it goes.
Yes.
And you'll keep us informed.
I will.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mike. So basically, the system you're proposing we'll go do this K-8 thing, we'll go this design stage, and let's say we do design build, we get bids and we're gonna move forward, we get that installed, then we do another part, we find out, what are you talking about, number of years to complete the whole island? I mean, great that the people in the K-8 area won't have water problems, but how about the rest of the island? What are we talking about? In total number of years, based on what you're talking about today, to get the whole island piped up?
At the moment, our resilient infrastructure upgrade program has a 10 to 15-year timeline. We're not going to be able to...
I'm not talking about your program. I'm asking about the storm sewer system.
The storm sewer system is the core of the program, of which a lot of other things hang on to, and it's going to take 10 to 15 years. The reality is we can't shut down the village for 2 years in order to build it all out all at once. So we have to do it incrementally.
Shut down anything.
We have to do it incrementally, you know. And a decision was made that predates me that K-8 was an area of critical concern, and so therefore that's where we've started, and then we're moving out beyond K-8 as the integration and implementation plan bears out.
Okay.
So I guess basically, I'm agreeing with you. I'm glad you did the K-8 thing, but instead of keep waiting, go ahead and do your 30% design for the entire village. How many years could you cut down the total time required to finish the system?
I can't answer that question, but I'd be happy to take it up with AECOM.
I appreciate the answer.
Okay, well, I'll look into it.
You also, I mean, you made the point that the purpose and effect of the K-8 work will not only be to determine the efficacy of the storage and drainage, but also will feed design solutions, all of the other
That's correct.
things that are going to be relevant village-wide.
That's correct.
Perfect. All right, let's call the question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm sorry, was that an opposed?
I was opposed, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Next item.
Next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving a continuing professional services agreement with Black & Beach Corporation for professional engineering, project management, and related services for the Resilient Infrastructure Program Strategy and Integrated Implementation Plan and supporting program management and execution project, providing for authorization, providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Wow, Roland is really on it.
Okay, so
tonight.
this is a critical contract that's going to work in concert with the AECOM stormwater design work as well as the FPL undergrounding work, and essentially is developing a roadmap for how we're going to get through the next 10, 15 years of relatively complex, put up the Gantt chart, a relatively complex series of lines of effort, all of which have multiple projects that need to be sequenced and logically thought out and prioritized and funded. So this roadmap, which is what we're calling our integration and implementation plan, is essentially to lend clarity not only to this effort,
But to all of them.
but all lines of effort that include shoreline protection, that include roadways, that include the undergrounding, that include dealing with the water and sewer lines, that include dealing with the stormwater system, that include dealing with the rights of way, and the shoreline protection not just on the ocean side, but on the shore, on the bay side, and how all of these things coordinate relative to our efforts with the Army Corps of Engineers and any other stakeholder like Miami-Dade Water and Sewer Department. So this particular contract is going to be ultimately dealing with how do we prioritize numerous individual projects under each of the 5 lines of effort, how will we phase and execute the projects geographically, how are we going to prioritize things, how are we going to sequence both the internal and external funding, how are we going to define the construction and program management, how are we going to develop and manage and monitor and control the report program progress, how are we going to develop project risk management. All of these things need to be developed and thought through as part of this integration and implementation plan. So basically, it's sort of like, how are we going to get from Miami to California if we're going to do a road trip? We're not just going to jump into our car and say, okay, you know what? I got no maps. I have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea where I'm going to get gas. I have no idea where I'm going to rest. I have no idea where I'm going to get food. I have no idea where I'm going to go to the bathroom. Some people might like to travel like that. It's very time consuming. You can get lost. You end up spending a lot of extra money and a lot of extra effort. This is a way to go forward from point A to point B, point A being now, point B being 15 years from now, when we have a resilient village of Key Biscayne that sets us up for the next 20, 30 years.
Okay.
So this contract is focused on that.
Comments? Councilmember Laredo?
Yeah, I think in all my conversations I have with you and staff, I wanted to emphasize that this is the single most important thing we can do as policymakers, to tell you all, and always remind ourselves with the obvious. 2 years ago, this community was unnecessarily divided over a bond issue. Those who voted for it, as written, those against it, were just a matter of how to proceed with it, not in substantive. Therefore, you have almost 100% consensus that the people of Key Biscayne are putting their money on the line to get this village up to speed. And also told us to tell you, since we pay you to do it, because we're not in the business of running the city. We're in the business of setting the policy. And what I'm telling you from my previous experiences from other people is the single most difficult 4 years to come are going to be coordinating all this stuff so that you minimize what it's going to be, folks out there, a disturbance on your daily life. There is no other way we have been able to find to put undergrounding, for example, without going underground. We look for pills, we look for nuclear technology. So all jest aside, we need to, have to educate the public that it's going to require a lot of patience. And for you to make sure that is, tear today, fill it up, which has happened, as you know, in other cities. And in 2 years, hey, you're tearing my street again. And so I'm supporting this. I'm supporting what you're doing and the outreach. But please, put a logo or something in your office that has to do with this mission, because this is it. Since 30 years ago when we founded this thing, this is the biggest investment in infrastructure. And infrastructure is a nice word intellectually, but it's a rough word in the actual building. And so congratulations of this, if you want to call the question. I think it's...
I agree 100% with what you just said, and actually the main driver of our integration and implementation plan is really a dig once mission. The reason that we want to do this is specifically to be able to only dig once. To the extent that we can do that perfectly, then we're heroes. Yeah. But this is going to help us be able to do that.
I'm going to continue as long as I'm here to remind you that that is the most important thing you can do, Mr. Manager, over the next 3 years.
Thank you.
And the basis, again, get grounded on why we were founded and get grounded on what happened 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. People said, we need action. Mm-hmm. And we can discuss later the difficulties and whether this is too much or little, but the people are desperate. And today was a blessing day and seeing flooding all over again, of getting going. So this is a great step forward, I think, in all these last three items. I congratulate you again, both of you and the manager, for getting a lot of input, because a lot of people don't realize that there have been a lot of meetings. They've had not just our meetings with the public to get the opportunity. And if you don't give your input now, we're not going to be able to satisfy your concerns 4 years from now.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions before we call the question? Okay, call the question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Motion
Next
carries.
item.
Thank you. I'm just having trouble hearing with this.
I know, I get it.
so-
No, you're good.
That was an exciting development.
We're
just
going
now.
to H and I.
H.
A resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the village manager to negotiate and enter into a First Amendment to the professional services agreement with Be Free LLC, doing business as Free B, to add one vehicle to the village's on-demand transit service for the remainder of the contract term in an amount not to exceed $77,000 and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
And Ed, if you're going to vote against something, say nay instead of yay. Just so it clarifies for the clerk, please, because there's a delay.
Or no?
So, okay. We're on the freebie now.
So this is,
Okay, guys, well, hold on. Let them present before you start questioning.
this is actually a good news story. Because of strong economic recovery in South Florida, CITT has generated more revenue than previously anticipated. So we do have an opportunity to add a vehicle to our freebie fleet. The demand has gone up to pre-pandemic and above pre-pandemic levels. What we're trying to accomplish is meet that demand, grow the demand, get people out of their cars for single trips to wherever, to demand centers. We're trying to get the wait times down, which incentivizes people to actually use freebie even more, because at the end of the day, if they can get there quicker by jumping in their car than calling freebie, then chances are they'll jump in their car. So there's several different reasons why we'd like to test this out. We did submit a grant to the Florida Department of Transportation for 3 additional vehicles. This 1 additional vehicle will be covered by the additional funds that we received from CITT. That'll take us through to the end of our existing contract with Freebie in, I believe, June 30th of 2023. By then, we should know from the DOT whether we get 3 years of funding for the 3 additional vehicles, at which point this vehicle will be part of that 3. If the demand is met and if the wait times are reduced, then we continue to grow the freebie fleet to get people out of their cars. That's what this is.
So is it clear, so the people who don't necessarily understand all those acronyms like CIT, that this 77,000 is not coming from our tax base?
That's correct. This
Thank you. Just say it like that.
And in terms
So
of
this is a freebie.
It's a freebie.
Okay. The only other thing, and I mentioned this to you, is to make sure that you stay on top of the culture of the drivers.
Yes.
And which means courtesy, which most of them do, and also flexibility. Sometimes they're so rigid, as it just happened to me. I was late for a meeting, I think, with you guys. And so attitude is important, and just make sure that you're in.
We have a very good
So
relationship.
thank you for getting us the freebie.
Yeah.
Councilmember McCormick and then Councilmember London.
You were talking about the wait times and the ridership numbers. Are you seeing that even now in the summer?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So clearly when people start coming back, because I definitely think we have a lot less people here right now.
Right. No, I see them. They're loaded up. The freebies around town are loaded
Yeah.
up. So,
Right.
Councilmember London?
Yeah, so it said not to exceed $77,000. Do I understand, Rolly, that at this point in time, CITT is going to pay the $77,000, won't cost us anything?
That's correct. And in fact, we've already collected it. So just to run the numbers, we had budgeted about.
That's fine. That's fine, great. Thank you very much.
The judge says shut up, you shut up.
Yeah,
All right.
you get a yes.
Anybody else? All right, call the question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, next item.
Next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the village manager to issue a work order to the Tamara Peacock Company Architects of Florida, Inc. to provide professional design and engineering services for the Village Beach Park Improvements Project in an amount not to exceed $162,888 and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Mike,
Yes.
this is my last one.
All right, go ahead, Ed. It's for Claire's birthday. You can speak now.
Thank you very much, and Claire appreciates it. But more importantly, I looked at the plan of what they're going to do, and then I looked at the cost, and then what stuck out like a sore thumb is 40%, almost $60,000 out of $147,000. Civil engineer. Claire, you're in the video now. So,
Hi, Claire.
Happy birthday, Claire.
So the question is, what are we doing from a civil engineering standpoint for $40,000?
The biggest part of it is the permitting. Miami-Dade County, permitting, sir.
Permitting.
Permitting. We have to permit this Miami-Dade County dorm, and the Miami-Dade County has been lately notorious on how late amount of comments, round of comments they've been giving us. This is a time and material contract negotiated, so it's not, it is, we are on the conservative side in the hours to get the permitting done. However, if it's a lot easier than what we anticipated, we're not gonna pay this money. So it's just time and material based on anticipated work. In addition
Is
to.
that the entire contract with whatever the name is, Babcock, Beacock?
Yes.
The 101,000, it's just, that's not to exceed, but they're gonna bill us just one time use, but that's not to exceed price, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
This is time and material not to exceed $162,000, correct?
And that's for all the sub bids, just not civil engineering, they got structural, MEP, everything.
Every trade is included, sir, yes.
Everything's included, but everything is time and material. Cost
Correct,
wise.
correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Wow. Okay, anybody else? Let's call the question.
No.
Oh, hold on.
I have some stuff here.
Okay.
Okay. No, I think that I had the same question with the civil. The civil looked high, and I really don't know how much we're really moving dirt around, other than what I saw in the design was kind of like a walkway instead of what we have currently there, which is like a wooden kind of ramp. You know, from a policy standpoint, I think we need to decide a little bit about what we really want to do there. Because I know that I think Jeremy kind of presented at one point, like, why don't we move the bathrooms to the other side so you can get this view? You know, I went out there, and we use it all the time for birthday parties and stuff, and, you know, go out there sometimes in the evenings. I really don't have a big issue with the way that it's laid out right now. I think it could definitely use a good kind of facelift of the existing buildings that we have. I think that we can bring in some really nice landscape into it to make it a lot more special. I like the ideas of the splash pad adjustments that they're kind of bringing into it, but I don't see moving the plumbing from one side to the other side of bathrooms and trying to shift things around, because I think it's going to, one, it's going to incur big costs. Two, I think it's nice the way it is. I think that it really needs some a little bit more minimal things that can be done. Now, you know, I think I might have told Jeremy, I probably told Steve as well. And, you know, the big pavilion to me, having this kind of like sink in the center is like a killer of the use of space. So yeah, why don't we try to move that over and you know, update the pavilion so that structurally it's sound and it's nice and you know, do those kind of upgrades. But when I looked at this, it looked like, you know, from a cost standpoint, that maybe this is a much larger project that we're going into, and I think that there's some design options that might come up. I was a little confused in the proposal itself. I don't want to get too critical into it, but it talks a little bit about that. You know, it's construction documents 30, 60, 90 over here. It's design development 30, 90, 100, and then when you go into civil, there's schematic design, design development, construction documents, permitting. So there's a lot of like inconsistencies of the different phasings that would happen in here. So one of my questions was, are we already finished with the design and they're just going to develop based off this design that we have, or are they starting from scratch and going to develop schematic design to us?
Yeah. This is.
Hi, Jeremy Karaskalgar. Just to start with the concept design and what was reviewed by council previously. We had settled on the design that was a fairly minimal change in the operation. So the restroom buildings that are there now are really falling apart and need to be rebuilt. So that's the idea, is to basically rebuild more or less in the same footprint of where they are. And that was the design we settled on, not a major move of the structures. That being said, it would still open up some of the sight lines and things, and also consolidate equipment. So right now, the equipment that supplies the splash pad is sort of sitting out by the pavilion, and as that gets replaced, to go ahead and move it and consolidate that to free up space. So generally, though speaking, the pavilion stays, the centerpiece goes away. Everything that we had presented is the basis for basis for this design.
Okay. The other thing I have that kind of relates to what Councilmember London said, it says a stipulated sum, which in my mind's a fixed fee, unless I'm incorrect about that. So I don't know if this is an hourly not to exceed, or is this fixed?
It is hourly not to exceed, and again, they use this term interchangeably, but our contract is hourly rate contracts. So that's what we pay based on hourly. What will they do is they will submit invoice, their timesheets, amount of hours spent each phase, and then we'll approve and get paid accordingly to that fee schedule.
So based on the scope of work that, so you guys are still going to develop a scope of work that may adjust what their costs might be? Because, I mean, from my experience, hourly turns out to be more expensive than a fixed fee at the end of the day. You know, people, when it's hourly, it goes. So, you know, it might be better to define what scope we really want to get done and tell them this is how much it's going to cost and hold them to it.
Again, the scope is, I would say, defined based on what the council approved and which exhibited in this proposal. Now, we have negotiated hours for each phase. So let's say there's 100 hours for 30% design, 200. So those are pre-negotiated. So they are telling us that the level of effort they're going to put in, it's not going to exceed those hours. And we agreed to pay up to that point, but still, it's the engineer architect's job to prove to us that actually they spent those hours on each phase and invoice us accordingly. So we have a stopgap there, not to just pay just because we sign up this amount, but they're going to have to give us time.
They'll tell you at each phase how much they think it's going to be, and then you approve it. And then with this design that you have here, do you see that we can use the same foundations that we already have? So we're using the real same footprint. We're just redoing the building so that it structurally works and it's a new design.
And it's not really my area there, but I think this buildings are a lot skinnier than what exists today, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, the idea is to scale down below what's existing today. There might be a small expansion to accommodate the equipment and some storage space. But absolutely, the idea is to minimize additional impact.
Well, could we use landscape to kind of reduce it? I just don't want to spend money, right? I don't see it as like a bad design, like a bad layout that's already there. So I just don't want to, hey, we're going to spend more money just to kind of make the building a little smaller, or can we add more landscape into it and make it a nicer, more pleasant and kind of hidden a little bit, or vines or something? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, you know, do we have to redesign something and put it almost back in the exact same spot? And it's probably going to be the cost of moving it anyways.
Well, there's a couple issues that we had discussed when we approved the concept plan. Was there's some SEPTED issues, there's some crime prevention through design issues with the existing bathrooms that could be improved.
Some crime prevention?
Right. So the way the bathroom structures are now, you sort of enter in and then there's additional stalls as opposed to sort of direct entry, which can be a better option.
What crime prevention is that?
Defensible space.
I mean, it's defensible space, more visibility. And that's the same issue with where the sink is now. It creates these blind spots.
But do we have crime there? Is there?
I mean, we got we got kids hanging out and drinking. That's a different story. I don't think we have.
That was one of the issues. The other one is
I agree with that, but that's not going to be stopped by making the bathroom open. You know.
Yeah.
So another one that was an issue that was brought up at multiple public meetings was the desirability to improve the sight lines to the ocean when you really enter the park, and that was part of the reason. You know, currently when you enter the park, you look at the backside of the building. It's landscaped. There's a rhododendron there, but the idea was to open up the views, and that was something that came up again and again at public meetings. So that's one of the things. I don't think we're spending money to spend money. Those buildings need to be replaced completely already. So sort of consolidating the stalls, I don't think it's not going to be a big difference maker in the overall budget.
Okay.
Councilmember Laredo.
I don't.
I'm sorry. Hold on. I promised Councilmember McCormick. Apologize.
So I like the way this got a little skinnier to address your idea, which I kind of wish you hadn't told me, because like Brett, I always liked going to the beach park. Never thought there was anything wrong until you pointed out that when you get there, you can't see the ocean. But the one thing I don't remember from when we approved the plan is the elevated seating. Is that something we're committed to? Did we approve that?
It is, although that's really, I think the reason it's sort of back of mind is because it's really designed as a later phase to accommodate some future seawall that's going to be integrated in the dune.
I see.
So it's really long-term, and I don't think it's going to be built until we're accounting for that additional height of the dune.
Thank you.
Councilmember Laredo.
Yes, I don't know whether it's intentionally or we subconsciously, and I include myself. So, and this council sometimes takes a while to decide, and then we revisit the decision, and we go and take a second bite at the apple and third bite at the apple. We had a pretty long discussion on design, generally as policymakers before, to give you instructions to come back with this. Also, we need to highlight, and you need to do that all the time when you do have public hearings, that is with the public, that you've reached out to the public. And this is the best that, in the best of your knowledge and our decision-making, it's the best design, and we went over it. I just hate to always revisit. It's be hard to work for a board of directors like us, because it's like you get instructions, and at the next meeting you get corrections or amendments, et cetera. So I think it's not perfect. I think the idea that we agreed in, and clearly using the one thing that was very clear to me and everybody spoke to, is the view instead of blocking the view of the picture. So I have no problem with this, Mr. Mayor. I think it's, they again ought to be commended for reaching out. None of these decisions have been done without some sort of public hearing, public meetings.
Right. Councilmember Kaplan.
I'm ready to vote, but I think to mention, I know we discussed the placement of the benches, and I just think to remind you, the benches are looking over the parking lot of the beach club, and there's an ocean right over there. We could do better with that.
Along the walkway, yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, Councilmember London.
We had, I think, 2 public meetings where the public is invited. The architects came, I went to one of them, had tremendous public interest besides the council people. I think we had one person attend for input. Basically showed no interest in the thing whatsoever. And I'm pretty sure the second meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, you had very few people also come. So the public really had the opportunity for input, and basically we looked at the architect's plans, a couple different things, and we came to our decisions based on that. But the public did have an input, a chance to input, and they chose not to.
All right.
Yeah, I think we had one additional meeting where we had about 30 people there, though.
Yeah,
Let's call the question.
we averaged
Yeah,
about 30 to
I
40
think
people.
my,
Can
I
we call-
mean, I guess my question, well, I'm for it. I mean, that we do need to do the work. I have some concerns about the design, but I'm not a design guy. Councilmember or Vice Mayor, would you want to talk to them a little bit with approving it? I'd like to approve it, but if you can find some ways to sort of architecturally spice it up.
Can I just add one thing? Because like the council member and I spoke, Vice Mayor and I spoke today. So I want to go back to what Vice Mayor, you guys keep switching positions on me. Councilmember London just mentioned. We actually had 4 meetings, and I would say we probably averaged about 30 persons per meeting. But we also did a survey because we found that we weren't necessarily reaching the population that was using the park itself. And I don't have the exact numbers offhand right now, but it was over 150 people we got feedback from the community. So, if you can add that up, we're talking over 200 people from the community who provided us feedback. And, just like we've had 4 meetings during the planning phase, and I mentioned this and I'll continue to mention every time we do this, I commit to at least 2 public meetings during every phase of the design. So, we will do 2. And with that, I want to turn it over to you, Vice Mayor, for any input on your thoughts for design.
No, I was just looking at a way to simplify it. That's all. I don't remember, and I'm sorry, I just don't remember that we approved a design. I know that you guys went and did public meetings. I didn't know there was a design that we said, yes, we want that.
No, it's just
option.
concepts. I wouldn't say we have
Okay.
approved anything
I didn't know
that's
that.
set in stone at all. It's
Yeah.
just some concepts that I think is going to guide the
So you want
the architect. to move
I
forward.
was just saying I can live with what's there upgraded, and that would be fine with me. But if the community wants to spend, because I'm sure that's going to be well over $1 million to update this park, maybe even more. I mean, if this little 530 park is over 1.2, you're going to be looking up there, and I don't want this to turn into now everybody yelling at each other like, oh, now we're going to spend this kind of money. So, I mean, I know we still have to if we're going to upgrade the buildings, but you know, I think it's a beautiful park when you're walking down there, and I think it can definitely need some tender love and care. Do we need to start moving things around? I don't agree with that, but if that's what you're getting from the public, then you know we can move forward with it. And because I think either one is going to be nice. I just think one is a little bit more expensive.
I think this is a tale of two parks. The eastern end is well appreciated. The western side is not.
Forgotten.
It's not.
Well, even the eastern side, somebody brought this up, a photograph, sorry to interrupt you, but you know, you're looking right onto the parking lot, and Luis de la Cruz sent me a picture of that, and he's like, you know, we need to put just a fence there of whatever, tall hedges or something that would take that away. So, and that's an easy thing, but they're not going to do that until a design is probably put together and ready to go, because you're not going to tear it up again. So.
All right, well, let's call the question. I mean, I think we're there.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
What do we go back to 10?
Is that?
The
What do we
next,
go back to 10B or?
No, I think, oh, do we, oh, 10B,
or 8B.
let's go to 10B. 10B.
a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving Family Crossing Guard LLC for school crossing guard services in an amount not to exceed $226,195 annually, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Can we
Anybody?
call the question?
Yeah, let's call the question. I mean, just to be clear, I think you answered it for Councilmember McCormick. You know, the current, we have some awesome crossing guards working for us now. Just want to make sure that they're going to be brought over if they want to be.
Yes, everyone will be retained that wants to be retained.
Beautiful. That's what I wanted. All right, anybody else? Comments, questions?
No, let's go.
Let's go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Motion carries.
Next.
Next item is a capital project authorizing resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving the purchase of police body-worn camera equipment, tasers, data storage, and related maintenance and technical services from Axion Enterprise, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $296,568.64 over a 5-year period, providing for authorization, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Call the question.
Anybody? Questions? Call the question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Next.
Motion carries. The next item is a capital project authorizing resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving the purchase of security cameras for village facilities from ER Tech Systems, Inc., DBA Broadcast Systems in an amount not to exceed $154,107.85, providing for authorization, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Moved. Second.
Thank you.
I have a question on this one. Exhibit B actually was missing. I mean, it's there, but it was Vetted Security Solutions, and so was Exhibit C. So I couldn't compare what their bid, what do they call it? Integrated Security Systems.
I can tell you what the costs are.
Okay.
Exhibit B, which was Integrated Security Systems, was $476,000. And Vetted Security Solutions would only give us a proposal for LPR.
Mm-hmm.
They did not give a proposal for a village-wide security camera initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Their proposal for the LPR was $136,000, just the LPR.
So they basically were not qualified to do the entire job, right? Because they could only do a portion of the job.
they are qualified, they weren't willing to take on the project.
Oh, they didn't want to take it on. Okay. And then why are we adding another LPR? I was just curious about that.
We're not adding another LPR right now. There is a goal in the future to add another LPR.
By Westwood and Crandon, right?
That's the area we're looking at.
Okay, and can you I just want to see if you can explain to me if we already have one at the entrance coming in and out, what's the benefit that we get having another one inside?
It maximizes, without educating the criminals, it would maximize our
If you don't want to talk about that,
no,
that's fine.
just maximize coverage.
Okay.
We have coverage on the entry and exit block.
Okay.
That I believe towards Bill Baggs in that part of the village. That's an area that we can increase coverage.
And why are they providing the replacement for the LPRs free of charge?
So we've
want
had
the
some
project
issues
that
with it. We've had some issues with our current camera. The CEO flew down and met with me. I explained to him our displeasure at the current LPR status and how critical it was to the village, especially at the entry and exit block. And we did a half-a-day tour of the entry and exit block and the other location where our LPRs are currently installed. And they agreed to replace them at no cost to the village based on some of the issues that we had. So it's obviously going to increase. It's a much better product, what we're getting, and we're going to clean out the housing areas. The housing areas do take quite a bit of abuse because of the salt water. So they came up with some creative ideas on how we can minimize disruptions to the LPR.
Okay, and then kind of what happened with the other item there. So if somebody's coming at 154 and the other one's coming at 476, is it the same scope of work, or is it different scopes, or I mean, is one just providing very inexpensive prices, or just trying to figure out the
I
difference?
can't speak to the difference of bidding. I can tell you I've called other municipalities, including Fort Lauderdale, City of Miami, and Coral Gables, and they're moving towards broadcast systems.
Okay.
Vetted was like the market. They had the corner on the market, and everybody was using them.
But they're not
and
willing to do
everyone's
it.
moving towards broadcast systems right now.
And they didn't give you a reason why they weren't willing to do it?
He didn't.
Okay. Too much work?
I don't think it was too much work. I think where they're based out of, they're closer to Jupiter.
Okay.
And where their warehouses are, I don't know if they really wanted to take on the project. They did come down. It was a struggle to get them to get here. They
Okay.
finally did show up, but they didn't bid on the security part of it. They only bid on the LPR.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Call the question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm sorry, was that an
No, you said aye. You didn't say nay, right? You said aye? Councilmember Segarola?
you approved?
Oh, I said aye, yeah, aye.
Just a little delay, yeah.
Yeah, there was a little delay. Okay, next item?
Next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, selecting Aquatic Landscaping Design, Inc. for planting of new trees and related watering services in an amount not to exceed $66,220, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Okay,
Move it
second.
Thank you.
before.
Let her speak, but yeah, we'll come up. I mean, basically, Dr. Simon had some concerns about the placement of trees in the Harbor Drive Park. So he wanted to state his concerns, and then we could move forward with this. Just give him a chance to explain what he's concerned about, and then we can go from there.
I have a poster here for council to see. I don't know if the public will be able to see it.
Okay.
Hi, Steve Simon, 335 Harbor Lane. First, I want to thank the mayor for accommodating me now, and the manager and Jeremy for being so quick to respond to my concerns by email. I am concerned that the Harbor Drive Park component of the 2022 Neat Streets Miami Matching Grant Program conflicts with a certain requirement of our municipal code. The Neat Streets grant includes the installation of a green growing playground and 16 trees in Harbor Drive Park. Whether Harbor Drive Park is zoned GU or PROS, something which I understand has not been finally resolved, the approval process for how it will be used is identical. and this comes from our Muni Code, prior to establishing any new use of lands, the village shall conduct the following public hearings. And so please refer to sections 3102 and 3108 of our municipal code. I don't believe the village should move forward with the Harbor Drive Park component of this project due to its lack of compliance with our municipal code as stated in the previous paragraph. With or without the playground, planting trees in these numbers, which are not replacement trees, we didn't own the land when there was a storm, which are not replacement trees secondary to a storm, but they constitute a new use. Whether it is the 10, which I understand is the number shown on the GIS map, or the 16 listed on the grant application, and of this category, the 3 species are classified as large trees based upon how they will eventually mature, which determines spacing requirements, of course, not upon their size when planted. And this will therefore define certain uses of this park, and in so doing will exclude other uses. Furthermore, if stormwater pumps end up being placed in the park, the implementation of this grant project will take a big step in serving to define their locations because the root systems of these trees will eliminate the contiguous areas as options for underground pumps. From community relations perspective, it isn't just the grant application's requirement for community outreach, nor our municipal code that are relevant. Neighbors and residents' expectations for a process of engagement for the uses of a park have a basis in precedent. From the February 2016 council meeting, February 9th, Councilmember Kelly, quote, Councilmember Kelly addressed the council recommending to hold a workshop for the neighborhood park at Heather and Hampton. The attorney also addressed the council regarding the process when the village acquires land. It was the consensus of council to hold a workshop. In 2019, residents, regardless of their own personal wishes for how Harbor Drive Park would or wouldn't be used, were left with the understanding that this post-acquisition process would be replicated for a second neighborhood park. One evidence, of course, is that sign with or without the check mark that talks about community engagement. I understand that some want to address this as simply talking about final land use, whether it will be GU or PRS. No, I believe that it has to do with the uses within the park. And I think the question for the attorney should be, can you make the determination, can you have a hearing for the uses now, not whether you need one, which I believe you do, and I would like to get reinforcement of that. But can that hearing take place now, or must it wait until after the final determination of GU or PRS comes forth? But I would ask you to consider that when you put in trees like this, that will beget benches and pathways and access ways. And if you're going to put in a playground, if that's what the people want, then the trees should probably go in relationship to that. But all of these things, this is from an architect's point of view, you would first have these uses, then you would do the programming, then the design, then the development and construction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. I think that what he's bringing up, in my opinion, is the concern. We need community input on this, and I want to make sure just that I talked to the manager, and I think that's the only person I've actually spoken to about this, but we need to have community input before we start planting trees on that piece of land. That's my take. That's my belief. I just wanted to express that up here. I'm for this, and I will vote for the resolution. But I want to be clear that I would like to see us engage the public and make sure they are engaged before we start planning things. Councilmember McCormick.
I would it seems like Jeremy's chomping at the bit to say something. I'd be curious, what is the idea behind this, and where was the intention of putting them? And because everything that Dr. Simon said makes perfect sense to me about, you don't want to put the cart before the horse. If we don't know what we're doing there, why would we put an investment in trees that are going to grow very large and have big root systems to eventually, do we have to move them? Do we have to avoid them? So what was the thinking of, how did you come up with 16? Where did you think they would go?
So I think the number's actually 10. It was going to be 16. The numbers fluctuated a lot during the course of the application, so there's some inconsistency because prices were changing and we're sort of trying to hit a number. So I apologize for any confusion on that. So regarding placement and space, we have a 600-foot perimeter around that space. Anything we would do would include setbacks, whether it's a playground, a pump station, a generator. You're never going to put it right up against one edge. So considering a 600-foot perimeter, live oak spacing can be between 20 and 40 feet. We have a lot of room to work with. Absolutely, we can and should have a meeting, but certainly there is plenty of room to plant 10 trees on that site without interfering or creating an issue for any and all future uses. It's just a large enough site to accommodate that. Because this is a county grant application, this doesn't exclude them from being in the adjacent right-of-way either. So once you include that space, you really, because the right-of-way along Harbor is such a wide street, that actually creates that much more space that we could put the 10 trees. So I agree we should go out and review this prior to installation, but I think we can incorporate that.
Can I ask you, what happens if we approve this and we're applying and we have a grant, we say we're putting 10 trees there? What happens if we have a public meeting and the decision is we don't want to install them? Can we use that money to put trees somewhere else? Can we?
We would need to modify the grant, but we could.
Okay.
We would need to ask permission from the grantor to modify it.
And then the one other thing that is slightly off topic, but related to this park, the hedges are around the perimeter are getting really tall. And starting when you're in your car, you now can't always see completely over it. And it just strikes me that it's a wonderful place for sitting down thirsty teenagers or romantic teenagers to find a little corner behind the hedges. So maybe we should trim those.
Noted.
You want to see that? What?
But
Right.
I don't want to. No, I don't want anyone to feel like that's a place to go and do something that they don't want people to see.
All those who had not thought about it will be exploring it
Interesting.
tomorrow.
Interesting. Councilmember Laredo, you're up next.
No, I just, I mean, that's been constant, and Dr. Simon in particular is very open about his participation throughout any involvement in this council. But the narrow question here is to approve this moving forward, and just get a sense that to continue to reach out to people, and not necessarily quantity but quality of people who have shown an interest and some knowledge. At the end of the day, you're not going to satisfy anybody, but you don't want to make sure. So with that, I think it's narrowly just to move forward.
We've already, it's been moved, it's called.
Yeah.
Anybody
I think
else?
given the fact that we can still hold a meeting
Yes.
and make a decision to not put them there, if that is what we get out of a public meeting, then I can support this as it is now. But I want to say that into the recording here. Yeah.
Yeah, my biggest concern is that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and the drainage resiliency element of this park. Again, because we get lost in the forest, and it's one of the reasons why some of us voted for the expenditure, even though some people say we overpaid. We thank God we did.
I was about to say, nobody's saying that anymore.
Double that today, to make sure we don't miss that with our resiliency people. Okay, that's a lot more important than whether we move trees one way or the other from feet.
I'll second Councilmember McCormick's motion to add that as part of.
Well, it's part of the record by her saying.
No.
They're going to have a meeting. They're not going to do this and say, we're not going to have a meeting. Too bad. You're going to do a meeting, right? Okay.
I guess the other element that emerged from Dr. Simon's remarks is, in addition to the meeting, the zoning.
Yeah, that determination needs to be made.
Good.
I wasn't aware of this issue, before, so this is the first that I've heard. I heard that in talking with Councilmember Kaplan that there was an email, I guess, circulated. I didn't see it, but our process is I think Dr. Simon did articulate the process correctly on our pros designations or GU. We do have 2 separate hearings, 1 to determine a use and 2 to determine the site plan. In fact, I remember doing it here on the
5:30.
Yeah. And we explained it a couple of times, I think. Because originally there was a public works
If you're
yard
reminding
and then the park.
Dog park and
I'm not sure that at this point that would trigger that, but I think that process needs to occur at some point.
Good, fine. That's good. Let's go.
May I have a clarification?
Can I just
By
say
Reverend
one other
McCormick?
thing? Can we also just say thank you to Dr. Simon? He is so vigilant with these things and
Absolutely. Thank you
catches
for
them
bringing
all
it
the
to our
time.
attention.
The talk about the trees and the swale reminded me of him as well, so thank you.
Let's go.
Councilmember McCormick, did you make a motion?
No, it's okay.
We don't need a motion.
Consensus
No,
of council.
consensus of
that the-
council. We've directed staff to hold the meetings.
All right, thank
That's it.
you.
Well, no, but there was a motion to approve the contract.
No, we've already done that. Yeah,
Okay,
that
no, I just
motion,
wanna
you
make sure
made the
it's-
motion, I
No,
seconded
I know,
it.
but I'm making sure
The
she gets it
beginning,
right.
yes.
Yeah, no, the resolution's been,
Okay.
okay, let's call it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Is it possible to take a
Motion carries.
Yeah, you want to take a 5-minute
10
break?
minute
That's
meeting
fine.
so I can-
5-minute break? All right, we're
Yeah,
going to take
before the
a
manager
5-minute
starts.
recess before we start on the manager. I don't think the manager has a lot.
Manager, one brief question before we take that break. I noticed that, again, it's 200 pages on an item that it's not, the impact is almost minimal. 200 pages, double-sided. I mean, is there a reason why that is? And can we just, you don't need to give me
I think some of us like to have the hard copy.
but it's 200 pages.
I know, but I mean.
I don't know, I keep pounding on this.
The reason why it's so large, there's a couple ways we can do it. Either we can do it paper, or we can do it a hyperlink. Obviously, you
No,
can do-
but I mean, if you look at, again, let's don't make a big deal out of it. It's just common sense tells you the item is probably, I forgot, this is a relatively minor compared to others. I had very concise and very good stuff.
Yeah, but this was the entire contract.
Yeah,
and everything that went along
there's
with
about
it.
an
There's a
inch in
lot to
there.
it. That's what the city of Fort Lauderdale
Yeah,
does.
there's an inch of a contract. for
Nothing
Fort
against
Lauderdale,
City of Fort
man.
Lauderdale.
It's really about that fat. If
Well-
we took that, it'd be pretty small agenda.
You know what you
Yeah,
could
well,
do?
I'm just saying, let's try to save a few trees.
Most of it
anyway.
is the exhibit that describes Fort Lauderdale's scope.
Yes.
Line items.
Right.
I suppose it would have been a decision.
Somebody would have
just to
complained
avoid
that they didn't get the scope. I mean, I understand Councilmember Laredo's point. It's
Just
just,
general, to try to, when we can, use our judgment.
Okay.
Yeah, I hurt my shoulder on the
All
way
right,
over carrying.
we'll take
it, so-
5 minutes. We'll take 5 minutes and everybody can watch the Yankees losing 4-2.
It's not going to be that way. Now we got to watch, because it won't be that way.
Okay, folks, let's go.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is public comments.
Okay, okay. Is there anybody who'd like to speak on anything that we have left? Madam Clerk, if you would please read the instructions.
For those of you watching the meeting on Channel 77 on Comcast, on Channel 99 on AT&T UVerse, or streaming live via our website, if you would like to speak during public comments, please call 305-365-7569, then enter Zoom ID number 231-627-8415, followed by pound. There is no participant ID. Press pound again, then press 9, which will place you in a queue. When it is your turn to be called by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. If you have joined through the Zoom app, please click the raise your hand button.
Do we have anybody signed up, Madam Clerk?
Not that I can see.
Okay.
No.
All right, let's, next item.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Just 1 second.
Uh-oh.
The next item is reports and recommendations, village manager's report.
Mr. Manager?
So good evening, Mayor, council members. As you've seen tonight, we've had a lot of big items move forward, and I want to thank you for listening very carefully to our staff, because our folks have put a lot of time and effort into this. Just know that we take this seriously. These are big projects. These are big, bold steps for our community, but it is time to get moving forward. And I think we mentioned it, I think it was either Jake or Roland, but we really stand by the concept of dig once. And I think we might do that. We may actually put that above both Roland and Jake's desk, so they remember every single day. So with that, I'll call Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I just wanted to provide you an update with Scoot Safe and what we've been able to do since we kicked off in June. Our school resource officers, village resource officers have instructed over 350 summer camp students on Scoot Safe initiatives. We disseminated a press release on June 30th, and flyers were distributed to various village businesses. I can tell you this, Sir Pizza, Domino's, they're putting it on their deliveries, so they're assisting us to get the message out. We held an open house event on 4th of July in collaboration with Fire at the fire station after the parade, where we were able to distribute helmets and share safety tips with the community. I did have a parent, the first parent class was scheduled on July 7th. Unfortunately, no parents attended. I know that the village experiences a lot of travel during the summer. We do have 3 classes planned for when the school year starts. We've spoken to the PTA at K-8 also to assist us, and we're gonna schedule future parent classes. I'll take any questions or comments.
I just want the record to show, Madam, the part about emphasizing public hearings and people don't show up. I just want her on the record, parents. No, I'm ready to move
There's nothing.
to the next item.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Let's just keep going with it.
Did you want me to address the?
Yes, I think, I'm a lot calmer than when I call you after, because I find, I don't imagine parents, what happened in Uvalde from the policing is a lot of words I can't use now. And so I've been reassured, and people who call me parents, that we are way ahead on that, and not only in the planning and execution, but hopefully as well the courage and the commitment of what it is by far, obviously the definition of your job, which implies risking sometimes your lives, just like members of the armed forces. And I got a lot of comfort that we're there, and I thought people who may be watching would hear from you. It's a tough subject, is if you bring it up, it's not that we're trying to scare people, but it's a reality, unfortunately. And this is the worst case scenario where the failure, again, came from a derelict behavior to lose relatively mild words from the officers of 3 jurisdictions.
Yeah, so just briefly to brief the council, I can assure you that the men and women of the Key Biscayne Police Department, my predecessor, Chief Chuck Press, had policies in place. Since I've come in, we've reviewed all our policies and procedures. Active killer is something reviewed. It is the policy of the Key Biscayne Police Department that, God forbid, that day ever did arrive here on the island, we send the first officer in. There's no standing around. That first officer engages the threat until it's stopped or neutralized. I've spoken to the educators throughout the village at the end of the school year and throughout the summer. We do have several training sessions planned. I've also been collaborating with Chief Lang. We're going to be doing a joint training session. All the schools have been gracious around the village to open that up to us. I met with the new principal at St. Agnes. I know I'm meeting the new principal for KB8 next week, and each of them have indicated willingness to train with us and to train their staff. So I can assure for everyone listening, everyone in the chambers, we stand ready. Hopefully we never have to react to it, but what we saw in Uvalde, that's not our policy here. That's not our training standard throughout the state of Florida.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Todd?
Good evening. I'll quickly touch on the items that are in your agenda, but the youth programming that we initiated last year is going to be reconvened once the school year starts. We can put together that comprehensive list of programs. Parents who addressed you at the budget workshop are here again, and we have met. They've identified Coral Gables as kind of a gold standard. Okay. We've got a job description from them. We're planning a site visit, and we're looking at other organizations that may be able to assist us in this endeavor. And then athletic field programs, just to let you know, you'll remember some recommendations came from the youth athletics, the Village Athletics Advisory Board to you. Those are currently being implemented, which includes no non-residents under the age of 10 unless their parents work on the Village of Key Biscayne are being enrolled in our athletic programs this season, and we've limited the larger programs to their previous year's registration. And in addition, we're underway with our online registration test with volleyball.
Good. Perfect.
That's been...
How's it looking? Anybody doing it?
I mean, everybody's in summer.
Right. No, I was just curious because we said we were going to expand it a little bit, but no.
I registered my fictitious daughter, and it went well. So if that's any indication, it works.
She's growing so fast.
Yes. Just as a test.
I don't even want to know.
Sorry.
All right,
Thank
great. Appreciate it. Keep at it. Next.
Next up is our Chief Financial Officer to discuss our quarterly financial update.
Good evening. So the financials presented are through May. Because we start our fiscal year October 1 and go through September 30th, that's about 2/3 of the fiscal year completed. Just to highlight some of the quick areas, obviously our biggest revenue source is property taxes, and that's not linear. Property tax bills go out in November, and we receive about 2/3 of our property tax revenues in November and December because our residents really take advantage of either the 4% or the 3% discount for early payment. I'll just jump quickly to some of the other funds. As we mentioned earlier, in approving those freebies in the transportation fund, the CITT revenue is well over what we had budgeted. The economic activity is up, and that's the half-penny sales tax that funds those services. In terms of the stormwater and solid waste funds, once again, reiterate that the change to move those fees as a non-ad valorem assessment on the tax bill has paid tremendous dividends, and that we've already about 90–95% collection rate compared to around 50 to 60 in years past. So very comfortable where we are so far, and we'll update for the next quarter and into our budget hearings as well. Any questions?
No, keep at it.
All right.
Next item.
So no questions to the CFO. I'd ask my capital improvement program manager to come up and discuss the status of our capital improvement program.
What about the trim motion?
Right.
We have one other item.
Is the milling?
It's next up.
Oh, you're going to switch them around? Okay.
No, okay, I'm reading on the report.
We can do it this way if you want.
That's fine.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do.
I want to save it for the coup de grace at the end.
All right. Good evening, council members, mayor, vice mayor. Just going to go through a few updates to the CIP. We've made some great progress since our last meeting in June. I think I can do this, can't I? Okay. All right. right, so here are our projects. As you can see, a lot of them are scheduled to be completed within the next 6 months. All of them have started, so there's work underway. We've completed 7 so far, and we're on our way to completing several more. So it's very small, yes, but it is online in public format, but that's a testament to how many projects we're working on, I guess, so. And the professional services and maintenance projects are also continuing. I guess we'll go straight over to the fire engine. We attended the push-in ceremony. It was very cute. All of the kids sprayed down the very new fire engine. The next step is to outfit it with some equipment, and then once that's completed, there'll be some training on how to use that equipment, and the project will be closed out. Okay, go to the next one. Construction at the beach access at the Sands has started. They are going to do stumping and grinding on the trees that have been removed.
Right.
There's some fence updates that will be performed. Overall, it's about a 580-foot walkway, 6 feet wide. That should be completed within the next couple months. You can go to the next one. And the vessel exclusion zone, Roland's been working very hard to keep that rolling. We are having the signs made for those markers, because we can't put markers out without signs. And once those are completed, this markers will be installed, and that'll be a completed project as well.
Awesome. Keep them going. We like it.
Roland.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Yeah.
Before the big one comes. Is there a way to not require, just almost a monthly, or you used to do weekly reports, I don't know, you've been away, about where we stand on federal grants?
A grants report?
Yes, I mean, people are aware of billions of dollars that were thrown out.
Yes, it would be,
And
that's a good idea.
we're looking at hard choices on the budget.
Yeah.
And it'll be good to have a sense of where we will be getting all of it is taxpayers' money, I know that, but not from our millage.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Just to,
it's simple.
A report every month?
Yeah,
I think that's
just,
good.
what you applied, of course, so
Yeah.
that people see that we're actively seeking for this money.
we do an internal version of that, so I don't see why we couldn't do
It is
that
a
at the council meetings.
high priority as we go into.
I think that's a good idea.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think just to put it as part of the manager's report.
Yes.
Once a month at a
So that
council
we
meeting.
can see it, and
Yep.
also to show people, hey, we're not sitting around waiting for it. Because you gotta, there are very few guidelines, you heard me this before.
I
You just
totally
gotta
agree.
hustle after it, and just where you least expect it, there's $1 million here, $1 million there, pretty soon it's real money. And we
Yeah.
may return, nobody has to pay any taxes, wouldn't that be nice?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we can definitely add that in. I think that would fit well with this presentation.
Well, thank you.
Just a suggestion on that, during the budget, the ramp up to the budget season, if there's an event that warrants a more frequent report, an interim report, more frequently than monthly, send it.
Yes,
For grant specifically, or
Well, for example, the manager's memo on the millage makes the point that there'll be an ongoing effort to seek local opportunities. If something is flagged as either an opportunity or a realization, let us know, because that's going to influence our decisions on the budget.
yes. Well, I think for almost all grants, especially if there's a match, definitely if there's a match, we have to come to you to have you approve that regardless. So ideally, we don't present that to you new on the diocese. We'll have conversations with you about any new opportunities that are coming forward so that you can make an informed decision. But I think a report as needed, if not more than monthly,
yeah,
would be appropriate.
my suggestion is not too complicated, keep it simple. It's so people to know, our voters and taxpayers, what we're doing. And we may not get any money, but we're not sitting around.
We are looking, yeah.
So it's not, I don't want to call it PR, but it is information that is very vital. Very vital for them to know.
Great.
The lottery is up to
Thanks.
580
Yes, we can.
Should we add that?
810.
A monthly lottery ticket should be in the budget.
How many tickets did you buy?
One ticket. I'm going to put that in the budget this year. I'm going to buy one ticket every month.
You don't have to pay taxes. for
$12 annually. I'm just saying, let's just do it.
I'm on it, all right.
I hope you're not one digit off.
So, council member, yeah, we do this monthly, so we'll just tie this into the capital improvement presentations you
Yeah,
get.
yeah, but highlight it, highlight it.
got it.
Don't,
So this is something we do very detailed every single
I
month.
know.
So, yeah, it's easy.
but we live in the world of talking to the people and
Yeah,
explaining.
we'll make
to
it
them.
pretty
Okay.
for you.
Yeah,
Well, and whenever someone doesn't know, they assume that it isn't happening if they
Correct.
don't know.
Exactly.
We'll be happy to present that, because that's something that I think we're doing very successfully.
So I vote no.
All right, well, we got that out of the way.
And I come with good news too. So on June 28th, we met with the manager's budget estimate. A big event happened between June 28th and today, which is the property appraiser released their preliminary values their July 1st. And I included this chart here because unlike most years it's 0.1, 0.2% higher. This year, it was 1.1% higher than the June 1st. So what that means in dollars is $96 million more of taxable value. So the good news story is here, we'd be able to set the max millage with all the items that were included in the manager's budget estimate, but lower the millage rate required to do so because the valuations came in so much higher than when we first presented these in June. So the motion on the table is to set the maximum millage rate at 3.2884, which is less than was first presented in June because of this good news about the valuations being higher.
So I'll move that. Do I have a
That's
second?
in English, that's.
Okay, so, and I also want to clarify, this is for trim notice purposes only. We are not establishing the millage today. Our goal is to bring this number down, I would say dramatically. This is essentially the number that you came at us with at the budget workshop for all the bells and whistles, for everything, including projects that we, even at that point, some of us were saying we should put off. So I don't want people thinking, oh my God, they've raised the millage. We are not raising the millage. We are simply setting this as the cap.
Correct.
We cannot go higher than that without a 7-0 vote, and we all know how Ed Lund is going to vote, so we know we're never going to get above 3.28. But we will establish a millage at the second hearing. I guess we'll do it at the first and then
Either one or the first.
finalize it at the second for the millage rate. This is not establishing the millage. This is establishing the top. I always advocate that we push it out to get all of your desires in, what you believe you need to meet the expectations of our residents, and then we work to bring it down to a number that we believe will get us through. So,
Plus it's lower than June, correct?
yes.
So I mean,
It's lower than
let's make sure they understand, this is lower than the one we passed in June. So we're moving in the right direction.
Correct.
And the process point,
Right.
lessons learned in life.
So,
The millage, as eventually, ultimately said, has to fund the budget.
correct.
And we haven't gotten to the budget yet.
That's right.
We haven't
Councilmember Segarolo, I see you chomping at the bit.
Yeah, we're basically already in a recession. All the taxpayers are looking at increased costs and everything for next year. All the cities around us are lowering the millage. There is, and you're correct, we're not into the budget yet, but there is so much fat in this budget, it's not even worth talking about right now. There is no reason why we should set the trim notice any higher than last year's millage rate. I'm not for raising it to 3.28 or whatever it is. I'm for keeping it at 3.19. We should show some fiscal responsibility and some discipline and keep the trim notice at what it is now, so then we can, in the next couple of months, take a good hard look at the budget and really do something good for our residents and our taxpayers. So my position is no, I'm not for putting the trim notice at 3.28.
Okay.
Is there a second on your motion?
And the second
I seconded
is
it.
Kaplan. Okay. Anybody else, or do you want to call the question?
I just had one
We need a
comment.
voice vote on this, I believe. My motion was at 3.28, whatever the recommendation of staff was, that was the.
I second the manager's recommendation of 3.2884.
If Mayor, I think the item also to announce the budget hearings, I know they're at the dates. I know they're at the bottom of this agenda, so maybe the clerk can read that as part of your motion so the public has the benefit of that too.
Okay. Can you read that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that the Board of County Commissioners meeting is
Oh,
scheduled.
so
no.
this is a friendly amendment to change the date?
Budget hearings.
No, our budget hearings, because
Right.
it says on the motion, a motion to determine the proposed millage rate and the date, time, and place for the first and second budget hearings.
Oh, I
That's what it
apologize.
says on the agenda, so.
Because we had to change because of the, okay.
No, I just want your motion to.
My motion is amendment to a motion determining the proposed mill. I'm proposing that our trim notice millage rate is established at the rate recommended by staff, and that the date and time and place for the first and second public budget hearings are
I think as, the clerk should say it, but I think it's.
September 6th, 2022 for the first hearing, and then I think September 21st for 2022 for the second budget hearing. That's my motion.
Is this the second motion? Or
I second.
Oh, this is the same motion. I'm editing my motion.
And I second the motion as edited.
Thank you.
Why are we coupling them together?
Because we
They
had
were
to change the
on
date.
the,
They were coupled in their.
On the agenda, it
agenda.
says a motion to do that.
Have the motion,
We could decouple them if we want.
You
if
can
we so
decouple
chose,
it
yeah.
if you really
The
want.
first-
What I would suggest.
Okay, so decouple it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we can decouple, just the
Okay.
dates.
Okay, fine. You know what? I'm
Adhere to
happy
trim.
to, I rescind my rescission of, rescind my editorial, my
Well,
edit.
I move the dates, Mayor.
So okay, no, let's do the millage first, the trim notice first.
I just wanted to make a comment that, again, I'm going to be in favor with what the manager's presenting to us. I think responsibility is that we have to look at the budget before
Yes.
we can determine what the millage is. I think it's
Correct.
irresponsible that we have not gotten into the details, and you guys have been putting it together, and it's your recommendation. I also believe that we're going in the right direction. I think that there are going to be things that because I know how our manager is, and he's ambitious and he wants to get stuff done. But there's a lot of stuff in there that I think we might not be able to get to. So I think it's going to move in the right direction at that time. So I just want people to know that, again, this is just trim notice, and I am definitely in favor of getting very strict into what we have in our budget and what we really can accomplish. And we'll go in that direction, but I'm not going to favor in coming up with another millage rate that we haven't seen the budget first.
Councilmember McCormick, and then.
So I'm not going to reiterate what Brett just said, but I completely agree with him. The one thing I do want to add, for peace of mind of residents and talking about us taking this responsibility seriously and wanting to do the right thing, I came across a comment about the budget workshop and specifically some comments about the CIP, that there were things, this is ridiculous that they're talking about doing X, Y, and Z. And I just wanted to say that my impression of the CIP as it was presented to us at the workshop, I thought it was excellent because it included every sort of almost aspirational idea that's ever been talked about, but they were prioritized in such a way that you kind of know unless something changes in the community in terms of the will of the public, it's not really likely to happen, but it didn't get forgotten, it didn't get neglected. But also, and this is where I found the comment sort of irresponsible, it didn't get budgeted for. So, it said on there, the rebuilding of the Calusa Playhouse. We're not putting the millage rate at something so that we can do every single thing on that list. And I think as council members, it's important that we communicate that to the members of our community, that we are being responsible, and although those things were listed, they were not budgeted for. Thank you.
I'm glad you made that.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Lorena.
My vote on this, I voted against the millage last year. So, because fiscally, I think we need to be moving in the direction of cutting. There is an artificial economy, in my view, but I'm not, economists never get it right. Valuation equals equity, and equity is not cash for the taxpayer. When they send us a check, it's not say take it from my equity. You have to send a check with a US dollar. So yeah, we have these prices that our values are going up. That's wonderful, et cetera, but people are cash squeezed. We all know that if we keep it minimal. But my vote here, Figueroa and London, because we share a lot of philosophies, is procedural only. It is we're moving in the right direction. And second of all, this is the ceiling from which we cannot go over. It does not mean that we may wind up at 2 point something or 3 point, which is the one we voted, I think, 4-3 last year. We had 3 of us who wanted a 3. So a vote for this is not a vote for, it comes at a weird time. And it's hard to articulate to the public that it's not all we're going to raise taxes. Just we have to, under the law, do certain things. And in plain English, this is the top. It has come down, but we have the real choices. The tough month where maybe I won't be around. It's well, I hope to be around, but not. I'm kidding. It's the September meetings because we're going to have to.
No, that's exactly right.
People staring at us, and everybody is, their project is it, and that's what we get paid. This big money we get, as council members, we make a lot
Paycheck.
of money.
That's why we're here.
Tax free, right? Our salary is tax free.
Absolutely. My salary is absolutely tax free.
So I support the motion, Mr. Mayor, with that explanation for the purpose more of people who may.
I think we're lucky Tony's here. He's going to make sure the public fully understands what the trim notice means.
All right, call the question. Voice vote, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to make just one comment, because I think this is a fantastic discussion. And, one of the things why we kept it at this number, 3.2884, is it's the same budget that we presented at the workshop. And I don't feel comfortable making an arbitrary or unilateral decision on moving forward. I think this is something that we, as a body, need to do together. We have the responsibility, we're very clear, Benjamin, myself, and our directors, to go back, scrutinize the budget, work through every potential option to, make sure we have the most efficient business or operations that we do. And then what I intend to do is come back in September with a number of different scenarios that you can look at. One of them may be capital heavy, one might be maintenance and repair heavy, one might be a hybrid, and one might be looking at, potential additional revenues in some way. So I owe that to you. My goal was to get the trim rate to that which provides the services our residents expect at the price they want to pay. So that is what I intend to come back to you all in September.
Thank you.
I think I'd be interested in, I think we'd all be interested if there was some way to present what the effect of sticking with the rollback rate would be sort of in the aggregate. That would help us understand, I think, high level.
Well, you're talking at the budget hearings.
Yes.
Yeah, fine.
No, but now's the time to ask for what we want.
Well, my point would be, look, from here until September, we all need to get into the budget, need to meet, as Ed has said, we need to sit with the directors. We need to know what they're asking for, why they're asking for it, and what we can support and what we'll tell them we're not going to support on an individual basis. And then we'll move forward in September. I think that there is some truth in what Councilmember Segurola says about what's going on in the economy. But I think it would be irresponsible for us to say right now, we're going to set the millage at a peak here when we don't know what we need in this community. So I'm supporting this. So let's have a voice vote, please.
Vice Mayor Moss.
Yes.
Councilmember Segurola.
No.
Mayor Davey.
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Yes.
Councilmember Laredo.
Yes.
Councilmember London.
I'm sure
He's gone, but I would assume no.
No, but he
No.
can assume.
Councilmember London.
No, he's gone.
No, he left.
He left. They had a birthday party.
Who's there?
Oh, is he? No, it's just his camera's on. He left that. It's kind of like, school.
Thank God the
Okay.
camera's off. Imagine
No vote.
if we see some celebration, we're not supposed to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's get that camera turned off.
Being that was his bedroom, I don't know.
All right. Okay, now you took it to a new level.
What, I'm
All
concerned
right,
about.
now
my
let's
roommate's
move on.
thing with
Next
the-
item, please,
with the
before
hedges over there.
we get in trouble. Next item.
I come from the
Councilmember
moral
McCormick.
majority.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so Mayor. what
That had to be the
I'm saying
diciest
before,
trim notice vote I've ever heard. Go ahead.
is that, the motion was, we also have to have a
The motion on that-
setting the budget hearings,
Correct.
times, location.
Councilmember Laredo made that. I'll second that.
It's September 6th at 6 PM in our council chambers is the first budget hearing. What is the second hearing date, Jocelyn? Because I know we're moving it because of.
Thought it was the
Moving
22nd.
it from the 20th to the 21st.
21st, sorry.
So September 21st
September 21st.
We can have,
Wednesday.
let's,
Yeah, Wednesday, yeah.
at 6 PM?
Yes.
Okay, in the council chambers. So
Yes.
if we could have a motion to,
he already put the motion on.
okay.
Second.
I already seconded it.
Mayor Davey
Too
seconded.
bad, so sad.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah. All right, next item.
The next item is mayor and council members, Miami-Dade County's recent traffic changes on Rickenbacker Causeway. Vice Mayor Moss.
All right, so I want to bring up two items in there. So one of them, I'm getting a lot of calls from public, residents that are concerned that the closing of the streets and this kind of campaign that they're doing where they're closing one lane in the street to ensure that does not happen during the school year and during working hours, because it will create an enormous issue. Personally, I really don't mind them being on the weekends. I don't think they're that busy on the weekends, but
Depending on what hour, but.
No, the hours that they're doing it. But the weekdays would be a disaster. So I just want to make sure, I think, I met with our manager and you told me that this is almost done, but the problem is it just seems like they're making decisions on the whim left and right constantly out there. And I don't know if that's true and if that's going to be, but I think we need to relate that message to them that it cannot be during school and working hours during the year.
Do you want me to handle it?
Go ahead.
I think we've had some conversations with the mayor and her staff prior to what they did, and I agree with you. I think, the summer, one of their ideas was that it was logistics they were testing in terms of how to manage the pelotons as they're coming on. I believe that doing it in the fall would be a tough one. But we're going to have a conversation with them to follow up on that issue because, we need to know. And we'd like to know ahead of time and not when it's happening. So we're going to reach out probably next week. I believe the mayor is away right now. But when she returns, we'll be meeting with her to get on that one. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thoughts on this to convey when you have that meeting. One, when they're escorting the pelotons, it's one thing to shut down the right lane for the peloton, but to then be in the left lane with the police motorcycle, it just shuts down the entire thing.
Road.
And additionally, not only, is it when school starts, but if there's any type of negotiating that needs to happen, that first 2 weeks of school,
Right.
everyone
Impossible.
is driving their kid to school. People don't know, you're going to have an entire new sixth grade going to Mast. They don't know about the bus. Where does it go? Oh my goodness, my kid is going so far away. This is how I felt, by the way. I'm not making fun of anyone else. They're not going to the K-8 anymore. They're all the way over there. I have to drive my poor baby over there. The lineup of cars is so long. The idea to be contending with this organized peloton shutting down a lane, it's just really going to be a problem. So the first day of school is Wednesday, August 17th.
Right.
Which is also strange because we don't usually start school on a Wednesday. So I think there's going to be all kinds of confusion and a lot of cars driving people to school.
Sure. Yeah, I just say, because I've been saying it to those in positions of power, and I say it publicly all the time, because we got to cleanse our mind. We're going through all this pain and suffering for a sport. And I'm sorry, I guess Bicycle Bill Durham is the only person who drives around in bicycle more than I over the last 30 years. It is almost ludicrous that we would go through all these inconveniences and stuff, and there is, let's just be super generous. Let's say 10%. I know that some even staff person took issues with me because he does come to work on a bicycle. But I don't know anybody else who does. So, I love basketball. You love something else. This is a sport, and we have to worry about spending money. We have to fight a privatization. Let's just, get real when you have your conversations. That, and by the way, it's not Key Biscayner's a spoiler. It is the hardworking people in Hialeah, Little Havana, etc., who have 2 days off, sometimes only one, and this is their wonderful Saturday or Sunday. And, guys, I love to, of course, it's beautiful to drive Key Biscayne, but let's don't, I'm not anti-bicycling, but they have to adjust to our reality, not the other way. My point here, and I'm sorry to tell you, is that the driving force, the mentality, and we become kind of automatic to it. It's like we owe them. No. They owe us, and the people of Miami-Dade who are not the drivers. So, it's going to be another tough one. And, and I know, but I'm very clear on this on my talks, Mayor, because otherwise, we try, one is trying to do the right thing, but the politics and public service is the art of the possible. And the possible is not to cater to the minority, which serves no public policy purpose, because if they were coming to work or going to work, I would have a different speech like they do, as you know, in Europe. No. This is just.
No, I understand what your point is. Your point is taken.
I know.
Councilmember Kaplan, and then Councilmember.
Yeah, it's a perspective, but the counter perspective is that they have rights, and they do. The difficult reality and conundrum that this has presented for quite a long time is actually an opportunity. And the work that we've been exposed to recently that's coming out of planning in our village, in hopeful, constructive, and effective collaboration with the county, and maybe the city, and maybe others, is actually a structural solution to all of this conflicts and pressure points.
Agreed. But this issue, I mean, the Peloton issue, I think, is different than the rest of it. I think this, I don't want to say anything more, but.
Yeah, I just was going to say, I thank Councilmember Laredo for his perspective on how to look at this. I don't know that I would say quite the same words, but, there is this issue of who's paying to use the causeway, right? And I think that we get into sort of this defensive position in part because the way it feels when you're actually on the causeway. The enforcement out there is like 95, 99% against cars. And I see very few cyclists getting pulled over. And the interactions that I've heard about, luckily I've become really crazy about my speed on the causeway and haven't been pulled over. But people are feeling like a lot of attitude. And I certainly saw it when school was in session from the Miami-Dade County Police, that there was definitely an anti-cars headed in a certain direction. And they said point blank, I sarcastically said, thank you so much for being here to help the children. And the officer told me, we're here for the cyclists. So I think that part of the reason we get caught in this position of feeling like we're on the defensive is because in some ways we are. And I think those things, when the manager, when the mayor have those conversations, it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So I had two issues.
Second
that
point
was the
was-
one issue. So the second issue, a little bit more sensitive, and I'm not trying to diminish this in any way, but these tragic incidents that happen on the causeway between bicyclists and cars, and a few of them resulting in loss of life, which is horrific, and nobody wants to see that. I looked at the steps that the county has taken in order to try to make it safer for the bicyclists, and I can get behind the idea of separating and finding separation, and I see them starting to do this, and it looks like it's working, and that's great, and we should all get behind that, because that's the thing that will solve that problem the best. Second, strict enforcement. Again, me personally, I'm 100% behind that, because the problem is that the reckless driving, the people who speed extremely excessively, but even, all the time over the speed limit, I think it's curbing the behavior out there right now, even though I'm still getting passed by county buses, county public works. They're still flying right past me, so they don't even follow the new speed limits either. But that takes me to the third one, which is the speed limit change, which I think is unnecessary. I think it does very little to make this a safer street between 35 and 45. And I know that the county has given their statistics that, somebody gets hit at 35 and 45, they have a better chance. But I believe that statistics is a person standing there, not somebody who's bicycling with you at 25, 30 miles an hour. I've spoken to many bicyclists here, and every single one say it's ridiculous. They fear a car hitting them 35 or 45, and they think it's going to end up the same outcome if they got hit. But all of them say it's a very safe street for them to ride on, whether it's at 45 and 35. It makes no difference to them. And, I think it's an emotional reaction that they had. And now that people are driving, they're driving on practically a 3-lane highway at 35 miles an hour, which psychologically and the perception feels like you're not even moving. And I believe that can lead into something that's, an unintentional consequences of frustrated drivers behind the wheel, which I think is much more dangerous than 10 mile per hour speed limit. If you have enforcement and people going 45, is still a safe road. And even with the little enforcement that was there before, that road still did not even make it into the top 50 worst roads in the county. So it's relatively safe based on statistics. I did ask Jeremy to show me the incidents. Where did they occur? When did they occur? He gave them to me. There's 5 vehicle incidents that resulted in fatalities. And I'm not trying to diminish in any way the horrific that happened, but there's 5 that have happened in 16 years that resulted in 6 deaths. And many of them are from drunk drivers or somebody falling asleep at the wheel or a medical condition. It wasn't somebody going 45 miles per hour, and that should have been, and it's going to change at 35 miles per hour. So, for me, I think that we really need to go back and talk to the county, because I don't think what we should accept with this, this is temporary until whenever. I mean, that's permanent. And I think we need to tell them, look, if this is a campaign for 3 months over the summer to get people to realize that they need to slow down, fine, we can get behind that. But we got to go back to the appropriate speed that you were going. My car going down that bridge, I have to physically brake it in order to get down to 35. And if I put it on cruise control, my cruise control can't get the friction of the car to slow down that slow. I mean, you're in a 3-lane highway. The other thing is that there's 5 different speed limits now that you're constantly going up and down, and there's no reason behind it. And even where it's at 35 in the straightaway, no incidents have happened in there. So it just doesn't make any sense. So I think we need to put together a very rational presentation of why that we'll support the other 2, but we need to go back to the way that is the appropriate speed for a road like that. And let's go and sit down with them rationally, not emotionally, and put this together and talk to them about it and see if we can get that changed back.
Okay. I think that's another thing that will be addressed, and I'll come back in August, maybe even sooner, and we'll let you know where they stand. And when, I hear you, and I'm, we're not holding different opinions on this.
I know. I think it's just the approach of how we have to approach them.
But, yeah.
Not just to
And
go down there and say,
understanding
we
that,
don't like it.
Again,
This is why.
not our roadway, but it
get
is
it.
our driveway.
I get it.
And
But we
so
got to try
that's,
everything.
I know, I agree with you. That's the point. So, all right.
And that's a very important point for people to know.
Right.
That it is not our road and that we're not the ones putting 35. But Mr. Mayor, just a caveat to my statement before, which is an attitude. There is a good 20% of the bicyclists, even though it's a sport, who are responsible and who are.
I would say the majority are responsible. You have this Peloton
Okay,
groups. The
we
Pelotons
all
are the
seen
problem.
How they treat,
No, I agree with
particularly
you.
women when they're going, and the police. I mean, and they need to help us help them.
I agree.
By enforcing, just like the kite surfers took it upon themselves to give discipline. So it's not like all of them are bad, but there are a lot of bad apples, and they give all of these a bad.
I just want to add.
Those who are good, that should help us.
We have one more item before.
Okay,
we leave.
before I just want to add one thing that you guys said that I disagree a little bit with when you say it's not our road. I mean, we are county
We have no
residents.
control, yes.
I know, but we are county residents, and we
100%.
got to go down there and talk to them because it is our road in the end of the day.
We are talking to
It's just
them.
that we can't make the control of the
I agree.
change.
I 100% agree with you.
But to be very clear, the points that Brett has made are part of our strategy.
Yeah.
And are included in our talking points, which
Absolutely.
are sharp and refined.
And frustrated drivers are more dangerous. I'm telling you.
Also driving that slow, I think people start looking at their phone.
Yeah, possibly. All right, we have one more item from the village clerk.
Next item is a public records and access, public records request. The last few meetings, the administration has been presenting items on transparency and public records and access to these records, like resolutions, ordinances. And I just wanted to add clarity to the public on what the process is when we receive a public records request. And that a public record is a document, paper, letter, maps, anything, tapes, photographs. That's a public record and the objective for the village is for transparency. Some records may need to be redacted, but the steps are the request is received. It could be email, walk-in. The receipt is confirmed. There may or may not be a cost estimate to the record. They're researched and the records are released. And just wanted to make sure the public knew, and then I'm the records custodian and with my contact information.
Excellent.
What do you mean by redacted? I'm sorry.
If there's, potentially if there's records with social security numbers, you know.
Yeah, sorry, thank you.
Yes.
All right, everything else, anything else? Are we good? Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Oh.